Chapter 648. The matter of the seal was a long story and involved many people. Long Fei Yi had been forced to remove the seal in the abyss of the medicine-requesting cave. Although he had saved Gu Beiyue, he had suffered internal injuries. He had only just recovered a few days ago. Han Yunqing knew nothing about this matter. As for whether Gu Beiyue had noticed, she wasn't sure. However, Gu Beiyue was a smart person. Even if he had noticed, he might not have asked. The seal on Long Fei Ye's body was called the Love-Devouring Seal. It had been placed on him 2 years after he had become Kenzo's disciple. Tian Shan Kenzo had countless sword techniques, but only one set of internal strength techniques. It was called the Nirvana Mantra. Anyone who practiced the Tian Shan sword techniques had to practice the Nirvana Mantra. Anyone who practiced the Nirvana Mantra had to accept a seal to permanently seal away the negative qi in their body. When Long Fei Yi had first joined the sect, Kenzo had placed a seal on him to seal away the negative qi in his body. Then, he had begun to teach him how to cultivate internal strength. Long Fei Yi was extremely talented and diligent. In just 1 year, he had completed 50% of his internal strength, setting a new record in Tian Shan Kenzo. However, one day, when he was learning sword techniques from Kenzo, the seal on his body was suddenly broken. The internal strength he had cultivated for a year leaked out and disappeared. Kenzo was shocked and continued to place a seal on Long Fei Yi. Unfortunately, the seal was still broken a year later. Long Fei Yi had wasted another year of his cultivation. Kenzo didn't understand why either. All he knew was that Long Fei Yi wasn't suited to practice the Nirvana Mantra. Once he couldn't practice the Nirvana Mantra, he was destined to be unable to practice sword techniques. In other words, Long Fei Yi had no reason to stay in Tian Shan Kenzo. It wasn't easy for her to become Kenzo's disciple. Moreover, it was a closed-door disciple. How could Tang Yuan miss this opportunity? She secretly hoped that her son would one day become the successor of Tian Shan Kenzo and take control of Wulin. Tang Yuan told Elder Kenzo about Long Fei Ye's past and took out the East Qin imperial family's love-devouring seal, which had never been used before. She begged Elder Kenzo to use it to seal Long Fei Yi. The lustbite seal was the most precious treasure of the East Qin imperial family. Only those with limitless internal strength could activate it. Anyone who was sealed by this seal would be able to gather qi into strength. Outside of the body's true qi, all the unrighteous qi would form a powerful force called the lustbite force. The lustbite power was an evil power. If one couldn't control it, one would suffer from qi deviation. No one knew if it was serious. However, this power would always be sealed under the lustbite seal. Unless the seal was removed, it would be impossible to use it. When Elder Kenzo placed the seal on Long Fei Ye's body, he had spent a lot of effort to give him 3 chances to remove the seal on his own. Moreover, these chances were temporary. A price had to be paid to remove the seal, and each time the price was greater than the last. That time at Medicine Requesting Cave was Long Fei Ye's first time removing the seal on his own. It had to be said that the price had been steep. Removing the seal required the person who'd placed it. In this world, only Elder Kenzo could undo Long Fei Ye's love-devouring seal. Kenzo had once said that Long Fei Yi would never remove the seal unless he could fully control the lustbite force. The lustbite seal had a taboo rule: its user had to be a virgin. Otherwise, the seal would self-destruct and the lustbite force would vanish within 3 days. After being injured by Zhangqiuzi last time, Long Fei Ye's internal energy had not only recovered, but improved with each passing day. He was confident that he could control the lustbite force. His trip to Celestial Mountain this time wasn't just to fulfill his promise to Han Yunqing. According to his plans, he was supposed to head to Celestial Mountain after stabilizing the western regions. This year, Elder Kenzo had gone into closed-door cultivation frequently while Zhangqiuzi had turned Tian Shan Kenzo into a foul atmosphere. Moreover, he'd sent people to investigate Elder Kenzo's daily life multiple times, as if he suspected something. It was time for Long Fei Yi to get involved in Celestial Mountain's internal affairs. He needed the Lustbite force to deal with Zhang Qiuzi and his accomplices. How was he supposed to explain this to Han Yunqing? How much could he explain? Long Fei Yi was still hesitating when the driver called from outside. "Your Highness, esteemed Wang Fei, please go upstairs for dinner." The driver was a dutiful servant, but he was worried about his master's stomachs. If this dragged on any longer, they might as well eat dinner instead. "Let's get off the carriage." Long Fei Yi stopped hesitating. One day, he'd take this woman to pay respects to Imperial Father and Mufei. Then he'd tell her everything about East Qin, including the past she'd never been a part of. While other couples quarreled at the head of the bed and made up at the end, Long Fei Yi and Han Yunqing quarreled and made up in the carriage. When Han Yunqing saw the delicious vinegar cabbage on the table upstairs, she almost laughed out loud. Long Fei Yi, on the other hand, was very calm. He gave the driver a cold glance without a word. The driver had no idea where he'd gone wrong, so he didn't dare to ask His Highness Duke of Qin. Instead, he cautiously asked Han Yunqing, "Esteemed Wang Fei, shall we begin to order?" Han Yunqing said, "No need. Just bring the rice and a pot of tea." The driver was even more puzzled. He snuck a glance at His Highness Duke of Qin and saw that he didn't have any objections, so he did as he was told. Just like that, Han Yunqing and Long Fei ended up in the most expensive private room of the most expensive restaurant in the county. They ate a meal of white rice paired with vinegar-stewed cabbage. The driver uncle who couldn't figure it out peeked in from outside the door and saw that His Highness Duke of Qin didn't move his chopsticks much. It seemed like he didn't like sour food, but esteemed Wang Fei kept forcing him to eat. Multiple times, she put food in his mouth, but he still obediently ate. It had to be said that the driver almost didn't recognize His Highness Duke of Qin after seeing this scene. Who would have thought that Cloud Realm continent's coldest monarch would dote on his wife so much? He was completely at her mercy. A meal of vinegar cabbage made Han Yunqing forget all her unhappiness. On the way back to Yaoshui, she slept peacefully in Long Fei Ye's arms while cultivating the second level of the poison storage space. A few days later, they arrived at a side courtyard in Yaoshui and were surprised to see Duanmu Yao sitting by herself on the front steps. She seemed to be waiting for them to come back. How did she find this place? What was she doing here? Duanmu Yao was dressed in a spotless white muslin gown with a bright red waistcoat. Her entire person emanated an indescribable air of immortality. She sat there hugging her knees, looking both lovely and pitiful. Anyone who saw her would stop to take a second look. Long Fei Yi glanced at her with a hint of impatience in his eyes. Han Yunqing's face turned black as she glared at Long Fei Yi. She knows about this side courtyard too. Long Fei Yi's side courtyards were spread all over the world, but not everyone knew about them. Someone must have leaked the information. Have Chu Shifeng look into it later, Long Fei Yi said. Now Han Yunqing grew serious. Could it be, there's a spy? Who could have known about the side courtyard in Yaoshui and leaked the information to Duanmu Yao? Go to the northern suburbs. Send someone to pick up Gu Beiyue, Long Fei Yi said. Long Fei Yi had another estate in the northern suburbs, so Han Yunqing decided to have Duanmu Yao wait here. The driver was about to turn around when someone suddenly shouted from behind. Han Yunqing, are you in the carriage? Old uncle, esteemed Wang Fei is in the carriage, right? This voice, it's so familiar. Han Yunqing didn't even need to look to know that it was Mu Linger. Truly, an awn had fallen into the eye of a needle, what a coincidence. That damned girl couldn't have arrived earlier or later, but now of all times. If Han Yunqing remembered correctly, this wasn't the first time Mu Ling had ruined her plans. If Mu Ling wasn't Han Yunqing's cousin, what would have happened to her? Suspense. Han Yunqing peeked through the window and saw that Duanmu Yao had already stood up and was walking over. Mu Ling was riding a horse alone and had just arrived. When she saw Long Fei Ye's carriage, her attention was completely focused on it, so she hadn't noticed Duan Muyao standing at the gate. Han Yunqing and Long Fei Yi didn't say anything. The driver smiled and said, "Miss Ling, His Highness and esteemed Wang Fei aren't in the carriage. They haven't come back yet." Then Gu Mu Ling almost blurted out the name, Gu, but she stopped herself in time. "Then what about Gu Beiyue? Is he here?" Without waiting for the driver to reply, she asked, "Also, is Old Man Pill Fiend here?" The driver was anxious to help his master get rid of the trouble, so he nodded. They're all here. Quickly go in. This old servant still has matters to attend to, so I'm in a hurry to leave." Mu Ling, was in a hurry to find the Qi brother she'd been thinking about day and night, but when she turned around, she was shocked to see Duan Muyao standing there. Duan Muyao's figure flashed to the front of the carriage. She smiled. "Uncle Gao, are you going to pick up my senior brother?" "Miss Duanmu, what are you doing here?" Uncle Gao was the first to see Duan Muyao, but he feigned shock. He'd served His Highness Duke of Qin for many years and had traveled extensively with him. Naturally, he understood this junior sister of his well. "I have an urgent matter to discuss with my senior brother. If you're going to pick him up, I'll go with you." Duan Muyao prepared to board the carriage. Uncle Gao hurriedly stopped her. No. His Highness and esteemed Wang Fei are out and not in Yaoshui. This old servant is in a hurry to see a vet. These 4 horses are all sick." Mu Ling, was gullible, but Duan Muyao wasn't. She looked at the 4 horses and couldn't see anything wrong with them. She was determined to believe that Uncle Gao was going to pick up Duan Muyao. If her senior brother hadn't needed the carriage, Uncle Gao wouldn't have casually taken it out. After all, this carriage was her senior brother's favorite and he'd never let anyone touch it. Even she, who'd been his junior sister for so many years, had taken many carriages with him. She'd also taken many of the Duke of Qin's private carriages, but she'd never taken this one. In truth, she didn't have to make things difficult for Uncle Gao. She could have just followed him in secret and found her senior brother. But she didn't want to miss this opportunity. She wanted to sit in this carriage, lean against the high pillow he always leaned on, taste the black tea he drank every day, and feel his scent. It had been far too long since she'd seen him. She missed his appearance and his voice so much that she was about to go crazy. "Where's the vet?" Duan Muyao asked seriously. "In the south of the city," Uncle Gao replied offhandedly. "I happen to be heading south as well. Give me a ride." Duan Muyao wanted to board the carriage again. The driver tried to stop her, but Duan Muyao discreetly pushed his hand away. Mu Ling wanted to stop her as well, but Duan Muyao suddenly jumped into the carriage and lifted the curtains. She was stunned. Because inside the carriage. Chapter 649. The moment Duan Muyao lifted the curtains, she was so shocked that she couldn't make a sound. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. She didn't want to look, but she couldn't move her eyes away. It was as if she had been petrified, standing motionless in front of the carriage. Her hands were tightly gripping the curtains. Uncle Gao glanced into the carriage, then immediately turned back. His expression was one of amazement. Although he had heard about it before, this was the first time he had seen it with his own eyes. Reality proved that there was a huge difference between seeing with one's own eyes and hearing with one's own ears. Mu Linger had wanted to pull Duan Muyao down, but when she saw the situation, she walked over suspiciously. She took a look, then immediately turned back like Uncle Gao. Her face instantly turned red, and she didn't know what to do. Heavens, Han Yunqing and Long Fei Yi were in the carriage. Heavens, the two of them were actually kissing. Heavens, Duan Muyao had already lifted the curtains, but they were still kissing so passionately, so selflessly. Long Fei Yi was casually leaning back on the high pillow, Han Yunqing's entire body pressed against his. Her arms were wrapped around his neck, and his arms were wrapped around her waist. The two of them were so close together. As they kissed, Long Feiyi actually lifted his slender legs and wrapped them around Han Yunqing's legs, completely trapping her on his body. Duan Muyao witnessed this scene with her own eyes. She could clearly hear the sound of her heart being flung to the ground, shattering into pieces. How could this be? How could this be? How could she forget such a scene? She wouldn't be able to forget it for the rest of her life. She couldn't see Han Yunqing's expression, but she could see Long Feiyi's lowered eyelids as he kissed Han Yunqing in a delirious frenzy. Greed, infatuation, passion, and unable to stop. His chiseled face, his handsome features, his natural domineering aura, and his manly wildness in the midst of delirium. It was hard to imagine what it would feel like to be under his delights. At this very moment, wasn't Han Yunqing bearing all of his weight? His dominance, his wildness. Only God knew how intense his kiss was. Han Yunqing made muffled sounds, as if she was protesting, but also as if she was satisfied. He liked the sound of her voice and deepened the kiss. But to Duan Muyao's ears, that ambiguous sound was ear-piercing. Her hands were trembling, her heart was trembling, and her entire body was trembling. She knew that she couldn't continue watching, or she would definitely go crazy. However, she couldn't take her eyes off her. She was afraid that she would miss it. She was afraid that she didn't know how much love and affection Han Yunqing had received from Long Feiyi. Why? Why did Han Yunqing get it? What was so good about Han Yunqing? What does Long Feiyi like about Han Yunqing? She would learn and imitate, wouldn't that work? Was it too late? Duan Muyao was about to go crazy from jealousy. As Han Yunqing's muffled sounds grew louder, Long Feiyi let go of her long legs first before releasing her cherry lips. He didn't say anything, but kept his eyes on Han Yunqing, completely ignoring Duan Muyao, who was standing at the side. He had never liked to bother with such troublesome matters. When he encountered one, he would just walk away. However, Han Yunqing questioned him, "Why should I avoid her? Are you afraid of her?" Han Yunqing was about to get out of the car, but Duan Muyao lifted the curtain first. Hence, Han Yunqing turned around and leaned on him, kissing him so passionately that he didn't want to stop. Han Yunqing was really frightened by the kiss. She was almost out of breath. She lay on Long Feiyi's chest, gasping for air. Duan Muyao stood at the side, tears streaming down her cheeks. Just as she was about to speak, Long Feiyi suddenly turned around and pressed Han Yunqing under his body. He supported himself with one hand on the bed, while the other trailed down her waist. His tall, refined body was above her, and his slender back, full of strength, was enough to make one's imagination run wild. No. Han Yunqing couldn't help but cry out. No, no. Senior brother, you. Duan Muyao finally burst into tears. She was about to rush in when Long Feiyi angrily waved his hand. Scram! Only the heavens knew how displeased Long Feiyi was to be disturbed. He had long forgotten that there was someone beside him and was completely immersed in the moment. His wave of his hand caused Duan Muyao to fall off the carriage to the side. When the curtain fell, Han Yunqing finally burst into laughter. After so many battles with Duan Muyao, this seemed to be the most enjoyable. She didn't need to use her hands, nor did she need to use her brain. There was no way Duan Muyao was competing with her for a man. Han Yunqing was truly wicked. Just as she was rejoicing that her evil scheme had succeeded, Long Feiyi unexpectedly didn't laugh. He continued with his eyes lowered. His hand had already brushed past the base of her large buttocks. Through the material of her clothes, the strange feeling of caressing her made Han Yunqing quiver and her entire body tense. What was he trying to do? She was putting on an act, but he was very serious. His face was silent, and there was a bottomless darkness hidden in his eyes. Han Yunqing could clearly feel the heat coming from his lower abdomen. She finally realized that she had accidentally ignited a fire, and the fire was very big. She didn't reject him, but rather looked forward to it. He was her husband, after all. This was something she could openly admit. But this wasn't the right place. Not to mention the fact that this wasn't the right place, there were still people waiting outside. Long Fei Ye's hand was about to enter when Han Yunqing anxiously pulled him back. If she didn't stop him now, she didn't know if she would be able to calm down. Long Fei Yi, she said coquettishly. What are you doing? His hoarse voice had a hint of displeasure. You. She didn't know what to say. In the end, she whispered in his ear, Don't what? He pressed, his voice frighteningly deep. You're naughty. Han Yunqing suddenly pulled his hand. Long Fei Yi seemed to have sobered up a little. His other hand was also on the bed, trapping her between his two hands. He frowned and looked at her. Who's naughty? Say it clearly. This time, she was really embarrassed. You. It's you. She covered her face and turned to the side. He slowly moved closer and kissed his way down her face and neck, deliberately tickling her. She wasn't afraid and shivered. She really couldn't stand it. All right. She was still speaking softly at first, but as he kissed his way down and rubbed his way down her arm to the softness in front of her body, she really couldn't take it anymore and shouted, All right. Long Fei, that's enough. Don't. Long Fei Yi, that's enough. Don't. I don't want it. Go away. Long Fei Yi, I beg you. Long Fei Yi, you're naughty. Outside the carriage, Uncle Gao had already gone to wait in the distance. Mu Ling, the naive little girl, was already blushing as red as a monkey's butt. She had her back to the carriage and was covering her ears, but she couldn't help but eavesdrop. As for Duan Muyao, she was sitting beside the carriage, tears streaming down her face. She was in a sorry state. She raised her head to look at the tightly drawn carriage and listened to Han Yunqing's soft gasps of laughter. Her face was as pale as a corpse. She hated Han Yunqing to the core. She hated everything that had happened today, but she couldn't wait to find out how naughty he could be. How naughty? The senior she had admired since she was young, the reserved and taciturn senior, how could he be naughty? How could it be? Sob, Duan Muyao began to sob softly. What could be more devastating than this? Why? Why was it that at this moment, even she herself felt so lowly, so defeated, so pitiful? Long Fei Yi, why are you treating me like this? Why? The coquettish cries and laughter continued in the carriage. Towards the end, even Long Fei Ye's laughter could be heard. Duan Muyao was dumbfounded. She sat motionless on the ground. Those who didn't know better would think that she was crazy. After a long while, Long Fei Yi finally finished punishing Han Yunqing. Actually, the two of them didn't do anything. They only played for a while. Han Yunqing's entire body was tickled by Long Fei Yi. It was a lesson that left a deep impression. At this moment, she was lying on her back, gasping for breath. Long Fei Yi was sprawled on top of her. Get up, she urged. His weight wasn't light. Even though he didn't put all his weight on her, she still couldn't bear it. Let me lie down for a while. Be good. Long Fei Ye's voice was gentle, unlike his earlier ferocious state. Han Yunqing's heart softened so easily when it came to him. She gently stroked his back and realized that it was drenched in sweat. She couldn't help but chuckle. What are you laughing at? He asked. You're sweating just like that, she said frankly. What she meant was, Long Fei Yi propped himself up and looked at her seriously with furrowed brows. Just how bad are you? Han Yunqing felt very innocent. She naturally thought that way. She couldn't be blamed. She retorted, how am I bad? What are you thinking about again? Unexpectedly, Long Feiyi lowered his head and bit her ear, whispering, "When this prince has some free time, he will know just how bad you are." Finally, Han Yunqing's ears started to heat up. Before long, her ears and face were completely red. Of course, she knew what he meant. So, he was thinking the same thing. By the time Han Yunqing and Long Feiyi were done tidying up and sitting down, half an incense stick had already passed. They didn't get off the carriage and ignored Duan Muyao even more. Long Feiyi said, "Uncle Gao, why aren't we leaving?" Uncle Gao hurried over to drive the carriage. At this time, Duan Muyao finally recovered from her grief and despair. She suddenly stood up and spread her arms in front of the carriage to stop it. If she couldn't have it, then Han Yunqing shouldn't think about getting it either. Even if she got it, she wanted Han Yunqing to lose it. "Senior brother, Master told me to look for you. Have you received his letter?" Duan Muyao asked loudly. "It's useless. This prince has no time." "Scram!" Long Feiyi said impatiently. Previously, he still had some camaraderie between fellow disciples, but after Duan Muyao colluded with Jun Yixie, he couldn't be bothered to be courteous with her. "Senior brother, I've brought Master's letter." Duan Muyao took out a letter. It was indeed written by Elder Kenzo himself. When she found out that Master couldn't get in touch with Senior brother, she told Master that she could find Senior brother herself and have him give the letter to her. Master treated Senior brother like a father. Senior brother had never disobeyed any of Master's orders since he was young. She didn't believe that Senior brother would disobey Master's orders for a woman. "Uncle Gao," Long Feiyi said. Uncle Gao quickly reached for the letter, but Duan Muyao wouldn't give it to him. "Master said that I have to give it to you personally and that you have to read it on the spot." Han Yunqing felt like she was going to be defeated by Duan Muyao's shamelessness. She didn't need to guess to know that the letter in Duan Muyao's hand was one of the 3 must-haves that Elder Kenzo had mentioned. Long Feiyi was about to speak when she stopped him and got off the carriage. Chapter 650. Long Feiyi didn't like to waste words, much less waste time with irrelevant people. Although Duan Muyao held a lot of weight in the sword sect master's eyes and had considerable influence on Sangqiuzi's side, Long Fei still didn't place her in his eyes. If he wanted to meddle in Celestial Mountain's affairs, he didn't need Duan Muyao's face. He didn't need her help, nor did he fear her interference. He was going to order someone to snatch the letter and leave, but he didn't say anything when he saw Han Yunqing get off the carriage. Instead, he quietly drank tea and took out the annals of the 7 noble families to study. If Han Yunqing liked to play, he'd let her be. If she went overboard, he'd clean up the mess for her. As soon as Han Yunqing got off the carriage, Uncle Gao withdrew. Duan Muyao assumed that Long Feiyi would get off the carriage, but Han Yunqing got off alone. She felt disappointed and quickly wiped away her tears, not wanting Han Yunqing to see her in such a sorry state. Unfortunately, she could wipe away her tears, but the same couldn't be said for her disheveled state. Han Yunqing had already jumped off the carriage, but she sat back down and leaned lazily against the door frame, toying with the horsewhip in her hand. She didn't look at Duan Muyao directly, but studied her from the side. Han Yunqing's gaze first rested on Duan Muyao's feet, then slowly moved up and down her face. It was a standard look of contempt, full of disdain and disdain. Duan Muyao found it an eyesore. Duan Muyao was already feeling a little guilty, so Han Yunqing's scrutiny turned her shame into anger. "Han Yunqing, what are you looking at?" "I'm looking at what a clingy person looks like," Han Yunqing said, before examining Duan Muyao from head to toe. "Now you can see clearly." "You." Duan Muyao was so angry that she almost attacked, but held back in the end. Since Han Yunqing dared to get out of the car, she must make her regret it for the rest of her life. Although Master didn't know about Sangqiuzi's marriage with the Tang clan, he did know that she'd come looking for senior brother to treat her injuries. No matter what, she couldn't make a move. Neither could her words or actions be in the wrong. She couldn't leave any evidence that could be used against her. She had to let Han Yunqing be in the wrong so that she could complain. So what if Han Yunqing was Senior Marshal Brother's official wife? Once she gave Master a bad impression, she would have no chance. One had to know that with his master's temper, once he didn't like someone, he would hate them to the core. There was no way he could change his mind. Duanmu Yao ignored Han Yunqing's humiliation and ignored her as a person. She said loudly, "Senior brother, are you going to disobey Master's orders? If you don't want to read this letter, I'll leave. I'll bring the letter back to Master later." It wasn't clear whether Long Fei Yi heard her, but he was currently leaning lazily against a high pillow as he flipped through the pages of the annals of the 7 noble families. Han Yunqing grew angry as she narrowed her eyes at Duanmu Yao. This woman is obviously using the old Kenzo to threaten Long Fei Yi. Who said Long Fei Yi doesn't want to read this letter? You're the one who won't give it to him. Miss Duanmu, aren't you afraid of being struck by lightning for lying in broad daylight? Han Yunqing coldly asked. She's cursing me again. Duanmu Yao's rage boiled in her organs. She wanted nothing more than to curse her back, but for the sake of filing a complaint and not leaving any evidence behind, she held back. She took a deep breath before asking, Han Yunqing, you're a woman. Can't you talk things out properly? Why must you curse people? Han Yunqing smiled and tilted her head to ask the driver, did this princess consort curse people? Uncle Gao immediately shook his head. Han Yunqing then looked at Mu Linger, but before she could speak, Mu Linger ran over and asked, Han Yunqing, are you cursing people? Han Yunqing was very satisfied and said to Uncle Gao, here, you should learn more from Miss Linger in the future. Inside the carriage, Long Fei Yi was focused on the biography. His lips silently curved upwards. In the end, he still paid attention to her every word and action. Duanmu Yao was so angry that she almost cried. She couldn't hold it in any longer and cursed, Han Yunqing, you're the one who's not human. Don't go too far. You have no right to interfere in the matters between me and my senior brother. Get out of this princess way right now. This princess. It had to be said that Duanmu Yao's tone and arrogant expression were nothing like the princess of a large country. Instead, she was more like a spoiled little princess from a small country. Whether it was the eldest princess or the little princess, she had long lost her noble status. If this princess consort remembers correctly, you've already been banished from the Western Zhou imperial family. You colluded with the prince of Western Zhou's enemy, which is tantamount to treason. Duanmu Yao, you don't even have the most basic principles of being a person. You don't even have the basic responsibilities of a child. Don't you feel embarrassed when you mention the word princess? Han Yunqing lectured seriously, a noble status is both an honor and a responsibility. It's not something to be flaunted, it's something to be protected with all your might. Duanmu Yao, if you're still human, you should hurry up and bury your mother. Han Yunqing didn't casually curse Duanmu Yao as not human. She would never use such vulgar words casually. Empress Shui had been kidnapped, then assassinated in the Chu clan barracks. Because Duanmu Yao didn't believe in the assassination, she used Celestial Mountain's influence to pressure the Chu clan and Ning Cheng into investigating the matter. Thus, Empress Shui's body was still lying in the Chu clan barracks, unable to be buried. Long Fei Yi had sent men to assassinate her. From Long Fei Yi's standpoint, it didn't count for much. In the conflicts of the world, a general success was built on the bones of 10,000 men. There was no such thing as a power struggle that didn't involve sacrifice or bloodshed. But Duanmu Yao was Empress Shui's own daughter. From her standpoint, Empress Shui's death was tragic. She should be more anxious than anyone to find out the truth and bury her mother in peace. But not only did she have the time to meddle in Sang Qiuzi's affairs with the Tang clan, but she even had the time to block Long Fei Yi's carriage and fight over his affections. Han Yunqing wasn't insulting her by calling her not human. Duanmu Yao's soft spot had been jabbed, and her heart felt like it had been kicked. She'd lost her status as princess and the mother who doted on her most. How could she lose her senior brother as well? She wasn't stupid and knew his ambitions. One day, Celestial Mountain would be his. Master was old and would retire into seclusion eventually. If she lost him as well, she'd be left with nothing. You don't need to meddle in Western Zhou's internal affairs. Han Yunqing, who do you think you are? So what if I lose my status as a princess? I'm still better than you. What right do you have to criticize my birth as a mere daughter of the first wife? Duan Muyao demanded. How would Duan Muyao feel if Han Yunqing's origins were exposed one day? Han Yunqing was too lazy to comment on Duan Muyao's origins. Cold laughter rang out. Duan Muyao, this Wang Fei has no interest in your affairs. I only want to tell you, a good dog doesn't block the way. Scram! Duan Muyao was cursing her with every sentence. Han Yunqing, you're the dog. Duan Muyao raged. Are you going to scram or not? Han Yunqing grew impatient. Senior brother, are you sure you don't want this letter? Senior brother, I'm injured. Master asked you to treat me. Duan Muyao decided to reveal the contents of the letter. She waited for Han Yunqing to reply on Long Fei Ye's behalf. As soon as Han Yunqing said no, she'd leave immediately. She'd write a letter to complain that Han Yunqing was blocking her senior brother and that Han Yunqing wanted to kill her. Han Yunqing wouldn't fall for her trap so easily. She jumped off the carriage and walked up to Duan Muyao. Of course he wants it. Give it to me. Master said that it must be given to senior brother himself. Han Yunqing, you don't have the right to touch my master's letter. Duan Muyao said coldly. I'm Long Fei Ye's official consort. If I don't have the right, do you? Are you going to give it to me or not? Han Yunqing's voice was gloomy as she issued an ultimatum. No. Duan Muyao blurted out. Han Yunqing's eyes flashed craftily before she ordered. Duan Muyao secretly took Kenzo's letter. Someone come, steal it for this Wang Fei. Duan Muyao gave a start. She was clearly plotting against Han Yunqing, so why was she being accused of such a huge crime? Before Duan Muyao could retort, Chu Shifeng led a group of men to surround them. He was an experienced man and didn't waste words before attacking. Of course, he couldn't beat Duan Muyao alone, but he'd brought 10 shadow guards with him to protect His Highness from the shadows. Even if they couldn't beat Duan Muyao, they could still steal the letter from her hands. With Chu Shifeng and 11 shadow guards attacking at the same time, Duan Muyao had to defend herself even if she didn't want to fight. Soon enough, she was embroiled in a melee. Han Yunqing sat back in her carriage. She could play with Duan Muyao with her needles now, but she hadn't done so in the past. She had to prevent Duan Muyao from tattling to Kenzo. Although she wouldn't try to curry favor with Kenzo on purpose, she couldn't afford to offend the man, much less give Duan Muyao something to use against her. Kenzo was Long Fei Ye's master, after all. She hated seeing Long Fei Ye in a difficult position. Han Yunqing watched the fight with narrowed eyes, lost in thought. At this moment, someone suddenly handed her a cup of tea. The people inside didn't speak, and neither did Han Yunqing. She only smiled soundlessly as she accepted the tea and slowly sipped it. Tea personally brewed by His Highness Duke of Qin was truly delicious. With great difficulty, Duan Muyao finally found an opportunity to divert her attention and look over. Just in time to see this scene, she suddenly forgot to resist and stopped her sword to stare blankly. Seeing this, Chu Shifeng rushed over to snatch the letter, giving Duan Muyao a fright. She stuffed the letter into her robes and threw caution to the wind. Glaring hatefully at Han Yunqing, she said, I'm not giving it. Han Yunqing, if you have the skills, come and take it. Chu Shifeng was floored by the sight. How am I supposed to snatch it from her? Duan Muyao was certain that Chu Shifeng and the rest wouldn't dare to touch her. Only Han Yunqing could. She hadn't trained her swordsmanship for nothing after all. Even when facing off against 11 shadow guards at once, Han Yunqing still couldn't get close to her. Chu Shifeng looked at Han Yunqing awkwardly, unsure of what to do. Han Yunqing slowly finished her tea and grinned. Ling, go. Her smile was full of meaning, but it wasn't clear whether Mu Ling understood. Note to readers, don't wait for the second chapter, I'll make it up tomorrow morning. Please follow the Genius Little Poison Consort's public WeChat account. Every day, you'll receive wonderful book reviews and plot predictions. Chapter 651. It wasn't clear whether Mu Ling understood the deeper meaning in Han Yunqing's eyes, but she returned Han Yunqing's mischievous grin. Then she joined Chu Shifeng and the rest and said loudly, all of you, cover me. Mu Ling, this has nothing to do with you. Get out of the way. Duan Muyao panicked. Why didn't she realize there was another Mu Ling, by her side? Han Yunqing's my boss, so her business is my business. Mu Ling, was not only self-righteous, but even copied Duan Muyao's overbearing attitude. Duan Muyao, this lady will give you a chance. Be a good girl and hand over that letter, or else. She didn't finish, but chuckled. Just like Han Yunqing's smile, it was full of deep meaning. Seeing this, Han Yunqing stopped worrying. She knew that Mu Ling understood. Meddling in other people's business, you're seeking death. Duan Muyao raised her sword and made a beautiful slash before pointing it at Mu Ling. She looked fearless, but her heart was filled with anxiety. She could handle 11 Shadow Guard experts and Han Yunqing with ease, but Mu Ling, was a different story. Chu Shifeng, what are you waiting for? As soon as Mu Ling, finished speaking, Chu Shifeng and the 10 Shadow Guard rushed forward to surround Duan Muyao. Duan Muyao defended herself as she shouted, you men have the nerve to gang up on a single woman like me? Be a good girl and hand over the letter. I promise no one's going to bully you. Mu Ling, laughed disdainfully. She stood on one side, waiting for a chance to strike. Of course Duan Muyao knew that Mu Ling, was waiting for a chance, so she had to split her attention to guard against Mu Ling, But as soon as she did, Chu Shifeng's group closed in, forcing her to use all her strength. After a few rounds, Duan Muyao and Chu Shifeng's group of 11 Shadow Guard experts were now evenly matched. Chu Shifeng's group couldn't gain the upper hand, but Duan Muyao couldn't escape either. Duan Muyao grew more and more worried that Mu Ling would make a move. She viciously blocked Chu Shifeng's attack with her sword, then spun around and drew a circle with her blade. The sharp edge of her blade forced the Shadow Guard back before she could catch her breath and speak. She shouted, Senior Marshal Brother, I've suffered severe internal injuries. Can you help me treat them? Master, this. She wanted to tell him everything in the letter. She wanted to say that it was the same whether he read the letter or not, and that there was no need for him to take it. She wanted to give herself a way out. But before she could finish, Mu Ling suddenly flew towards her at breakneck speed. Alarmed, Duan Muyao was about to block when Chu Shifeng and the Shadow Guard flanked her from both sides. The situation was dire. Chu Shifeng and the Shadow Guard's attacks were far more dangerous than Mu Ling's. As a martial arts practitioner, Duan Muyao instinctively chose to block Chu Shifeng and the Shadow Guard instead of defending against Mu Ling. Unexpectedly, Mu Ling didn't use force as soon as she drew close, but grabbed her by the collar and tugged at her clothes without hesitation. SSS, the sudden voice caused everyone to stop, including Duan Muyao herself. Beneath her little red waistcoat, a long gash had been ripped open in her white muslin dress. The letter hidden in her bosom had long fallen to the ground, revealing her pale yellow chest wrap. Everyone was stunned. Only Han Yunqing and Mu Ling were laughing. Han Yunqing's smile was languid and relaxed, while Mu Ling's was sweet and harmless. The two sisters had a tacit understanding. Ah! Duan Muyao screamed as soon as she recovered her wits. She clutched at her chest in panic, not knowing what to do. She tried to buckle her waistcoat, but it only covered the top. The torn fabric beneath couldn't cover the rest. She looked around and realized that she was surrounded by men. They were all staring at her. "What are you all looking at? What are you looking at?" She flew into a rage out of humiliation and screamed, "You're not allowed to look. All of you, turn around for this princess. Do you hear me?" Her hands couldn't cover her shame. She didn't have the face to stay. She looked towards the carriage, only to see Han Yunqing looking at her with disdain. The curtains were tightly shut, and the people inside remained unmoved. Grievance, bitterness, unwillingness, and despair all turned into tears, flooding her eyes. "Senior brother, you're heartless, so don't blame me for being unjust. Han Yunqing, Mu Ling, Duan Muyao, will repay today's grudge by twofold." She choked with sobs as she shouted, then fiercely sheathed her sword and left in a sorry state. Mu Ling, didn't take Duan Muyao's warning to heart. She only remembered Duan Muyao's shameless words today. She picked up the letter and threw it at Han Yunqing. "Here. I'm looking for." Mu Ling almost said the wrong thing again. She stuck out her tongue and smiled. "I'm going to look for His Excellency Pill Fiend." Han Yunqing took the letter and opened it. Just as she guessed, Elder Kenzo still had 3 must-haves in the letter. She lifted the curtains and saw Long Fei Yi leisurely drinking tea. The annals of the 7 noble families had flipped to the last page, which introduced the Feng clan. She was working hard outside to help him deal with rotten peach blossoms, but he was leisurely drinking tea and reading in the carriage. But this attitude. Han Yunqing found it hard to like. She handed the letter over. "What should we do?" Duan Muyao was easy to dismiss, but Elder Kenzo wasn't. The letter was already delivered to the door, so it wouldn't be right if he didn't take it. Moreover, Duan Muyao had already told him that she might not dare to come again, but she would definitely continue to use Elder Kenzo to pressure Long Fei Yi. It was impossible for Long Fei Yi to feign ignorance. What should she do? She really didn't dare to offend Elder Kenzo. She had no other choice. Long Fei Yi wasn't even willing to touch the letter. He only glanced at it. "Why haven't you thrown away this useless thing? You have a solution." Han Yunqing was overjoyed. "Throw it away." He was a little impatient. Thinking about how Duan Muyao had hidden the letter in front of her chest, Han Yunqing felt disgusted and hurriedly threw it away. "I'll write a letter to Master later and say that I'm at Medicine Requesting Cave asking for medicine. My internal injuries haven't healed, so I can't help even if I want to," Long Fei Yi said calmly. "Will Elder Kenzo believe you?" Han Yunqing was very doubtful. From what she knew, Elder Kenzo only had eyes for one disciple, Duan Muyao. He didn't care about Long Fei Yi at all. "He will. This matter ends here." If Long Fei Yi told Master Kenzo that he'd suffered internal injuries, Master might not believe him. However, Master would definitely believe him if he told him that he'd broken the Lustbite seal. Compared to Duan Muyao's matter, which was more important? As long as his master wasn't crazy, he would still be able to tell. Although Duan Muyao couldn't climb Celestial Mountain right now, Master had connections in the martial arts circles. It wouldn't be difficult for him to find someone who could treat her injuries. He didn't have to be the only one. With Long Fei Ye's words, Han Yunqing stopped worrying. Before entering the room, Long Fei Yi had instructed Chu Shifeng in a low voice to investigate the matter of the traitor. "Your Highness, if there's a traitor, I'm afraid it's someone from the Tang clan," Chu Shifeng said seriously. They didn't live in Pill Fiend Pharmacy, nor did they live in the king's mansion. Instead, they lived in a side courtyard in Yaoshui. The servants here were all shadow guards, and the few maidservants were carefully selected and trusted. Chu Shifeng was certain that the problem didn't lie with them. Many members of the Tang clan knew the location of Yaoshui courtyard, so it was possible that they'd leaked the location to Duan Muyao. "No matter which side, your lordship wants answers," Long Fei Yi said. "This subordinate understands." Chu Shifeng obeyed and left. When Han Yunqing and Long Feiyi returned to the courtyard, they saw Mu Ling searching for someone. Han Yunqing shook her head helplessly. Mu Ling, this girl is so stupid. If she doesn't find Gu, he'll be the one to talk to her. Why is she so impatient? Still, there's no such thing as logic when you like someone. Where's Pill Fiend? Wasn't he supposed to be here? Mu Ling asked anxiously. Maybe, he went out. In any case, he'll come back. Why don't you go rest first? Han Yunqing didn't dare to reveal any more information. Gu had already suspected her last time. If she didn't restrain herself now and Gu found out the truth, Mu Ling would definitely be done for. Although Mu Ling had tricked Gu, a lover's heart wasn't a crime. Let her lie. Wasn't she lying to herself as well? Sometimes, the more you lie, the more it becomes true. It'll be a lifetime. Looking at Mu Ling, Han Yunqing's heart was filled with emotions. She knew that even if she spent a lifetime with Mu Ling, and didn't expose Gu's identity, Mu Ling, was willing and able to do it. Mu Ling, wanted to ask more, but when she saw Han Yunqing's meaningful glance, she immediately understood Han Yunqing's taboo. She said indifferently, okay, I'll wait for Senior to come back. Long Feiyi wasn't worried about Gu dealing with Medical City's head Elder Ling. After all, he didn't want to make a move against Medical City. Right now, he was paying attention to Ning Cheng's movements. Originally, he was recuperating in Yaoshui Villa while waiting for Chu Tianyin to surrender. Tang Li's marriage was just an accident. After visiting Gu Beiyue with Han Yunqing, Long Feiyi returned alone. Gu Beiyue had brewed tea and was waiting for him. Any news from Chu Tianyin? Long Feiyi got straight to the point. Gu Beiyue took out a small slip of paper. He sent it here 3 days ago. He asked about Empress Shui. Long Feiyi glanced at it before asking cold, what, does he suspect your lordship? He's just probing. Chu Tianyin already has intentions of surrendering. Within this month, he'll. Gu Beiyue trailed off, then lowered his voice, pushed the blame onto Ning Cheng. How are you so sure? Long Feiyi was intrigued. He originally wanted to use Empress Shui's matter to pit Duanmu Yao against the Chu clan. That way, Celestial Mountain's strength would directly tie down Ning Cheng. If Chu Shifeng wanted to frame Ning Cheng, then that would be perfect. Gu Beiyue smiled faintly. That's because this one gave him the idea. Long Feiyi was surprised, but felt that it made sense. He secretly rejoiced that he hadn't made an enemy out of Gu Beiyue. Otherwise, the sickly man might have become his strongest foe. You've been exposed. Before Long Feiyi could finish, Gu Beiyue cut him off. Your Highness, don't worry. This one didn't tell Chu Tianyin that your Highness knew about my identity as a member of the Shadow Clan. He will never know. Long Feiyi still believed Gu Beiyue's words. Alright, as long as he brings up Empress Shui's matter, your lordship will accept his surrender. Long Feiyi said. While Long Feiyi was plotting against Ning Cheng was also trying to figure out how to use Empress Shui's matter to evade Celestial Mountain's forces and scheme against Long Feiyi. In the West Jing Imperial Palace, he was sitting lazily on the railing of the tallest building, a thin needle in his mouth. It was unclear what he was thinking, but his cold gaze seemed to wander. Chapter 652. The tall building overlooked the entirety of West Liang. Ning Cheng was sitting lazily on the railing, completely unconcerned with the bustling city below him and its myriad of lights. He held a golden needle in his mouth and his gaze was somewhat wandering, as if he was lost in thought. At this time, he was not like when he was in the Bailey Chamber of Commerce, nor was he as cold and mature as when he was in the imperial court. His cold and handsome facial features revealed a hint of evil and cunning, and he was much more lazy. It was impossible to tell what he was thinking, but his lips curved up into a cold smile. It was both playful and disdainful, a complex mix of emotions. What was it that he was playful about, but disdainful of? Probably only he knew. So your Highness Duke of Ning was hiding here. You've made me look for you. Chu Qingge suddenly came upstairs. Ning Qing glanced at her before ignoring her. His cold face looked down at the imperial city. Your Highness Duke of Ning, has my elder brother come to find you? I heard Duan Muyao's been gone for days and hasn't returned yet, Chu Qingge asked next. Duan Muyao had been investigating Empress Shui's death in the Chu clan barracks, but had suddenly left for some unknown reason. She hadn't yet returned, so Empress Shui's case had been delayed. Chu Qingge had been keeping an eye on the situation and wanted to see Chu Tianyin multiple times to give him ideas. Unfortunately, he didn't want to see her. In his eyes, she was nothing but a traitor. She was too lazy to explain herself or argue. She knew she'd wronged the Chu clan, but they were the ones who wronged her first, weren't they? Chu Tianyin ignored her, but there was still Ning Qing. As long as Ning Qing nodded, Chu Tianyin would have to do as he was told. The two elders of the Chu clan were still locked up in prison, while Chu Tianyin was a filial son. How would he dare defy Ning Qing? When did you start caring about the Chu clan troops? Ning Qing was still looking down with a mocking smile. As soon as Chu Qingge saw him, she'd either ask him about Long Fei Yi or Han Yunqing. He was already sick of her. If he hadn't been distracted by her footsteps, he would have run away long ago. Chu clan army. Chu Qingge was leaning lazily against the railing. Her dazzling golden Empress Dowager robes didn't hide her natural aloofness, because even now, her heart was still high above the masses. This consort only cares about His Highness King Ning. After all, this consort and His Highness King Ning are bound together for good or ill. As for the Chu clan army, that's my elder brother's problem. Chu Qingge lazily rose to her feet and took a step closer to Ning Qing. In a self-mocking tone, she said, a married daughter is like spilled water. If this was the past, Ning Qing would still glance at Chu Qingge and compare her to Han Yunqing. After all, they were both women who liked Long Fei Yi, so they shouldn't be too far off. If you know yourself and your enemy, you will never be defeated. Even if you don't know Long Fei Yi, you should at least know what kind of women liked him. But now Ning Qing couldn't even be bothered to look at Chu Qingge. In fact, he even rejected her approach. He'd never thought about women before, so he couldn't understand how two women of similar ages could be so far apart from each other. Duke of Ning. Chu Qingge called out. Only then did Ning Qing recover his senses and realize he'd spaced out again. Damn it. Despite his irritation, his face was still as cold as ice. He pulled away from Chu Qingge and asked, stop wasting words. What did you find your lordship for? Chu Qingge was waiting for those exact words. She got straight to the point and said, if my elder brother can't deal with Duan Muyao, why don't I do it instead? You? Ning Qing was surprised. Chu Qingge nodded confidently. I grew up with Duan Muyao. We practiced martial arts together and studied together. I know her personality better than anyone. If Chu Qingge hadn't mentioned it, Ning Qing would have overlooked this point. Women always understood other women better than men, so it would be easier for a woman to deal with another woman than a man. What brilliant plan do you have? Ning Qing asked. Chu Qingge smiled and gestured for Ning Qing to come closer, but Ning Qing refused without hesitation. There's no one else here, so just say it. Chu Qingge's lips curved into a self-mocking smile. I must be missing that man too much. I'm actually trying to find traces of him on Ning Cheng's body. As long as we frame Han Yunqing for Empress Shui's assassination, Duan Muyao will definitely believe us. Moreover, she'll definitely investigate to the end. Chu Qingge said. As much as she hated Han Yunqing, Duan Muyao hated Han Yunqing as much as she did. Her hatred would only grow. Most importantly, Duan Muyao could bring the matter to Kenzo's ears. That way, even with Long Fei Ye's protection, Han Yunqing would still be in a lot of trouble. She had often heard Duanmu Yao say that Long Fei Yi treated Kenzo's elders with utmost respect and had never disobeyed him. Many times, her close friends had discussed marriage, but Duanmu Yao had always been smug and claimed that her master would uphold justice for her. In other words, the Kenzo's elders were trying to matchmake the two of them. Duke of Ning, as long as you and my big brother cooperate well and produce some evidence, Duanmu Yao will definitely believe us. When Ning Qing didn't reply, Chu Qingge added, I believe that Duanmu Yao will not only believe us, but add oil to the fire to make Han Yunqing's crimes a reality. Let Duanmu Yao and Han Yunqing fight it out. You and Chu Tianyin can just watch the show. You're so sure? Ning Cheng was intrigued. He had been keeping tabs on Empress Shui's affairs as well. Although Long Fei Yi hadn't made any moves, he had long suspected that Long Fei Yi had something to do with the assassination attempt. Besides Western Zhou, the only other enemy of the Chu and Ning clans was Long Fei Yi. As for Long Tianma, he didn't care at all. Western Zhou's imperial clan wouldn't be so ruthless as to kill the empress to sow discord between the Chu clan and Celestial Mountain. Only Long Fei Yi was the prime suspect. Chu Tianyin cooperated with Duanmu Yao's investigation while Ning Qing sent his own men to investigate in secret as well. Unfortunately, they hadn't found any evidence yet. Duke of Ning, why don't we make a bet? Chu Qingge smiled. She was worried that Ning Qing wouldn't agree. But Ning Qing simply nodded his head. All right, let's do that. He immediately ordered someone to summon Chu Tianyin. Chu Qingge was secretly delighted. Then I won't disturb you two any longer. Chu Qingge's face turned vicious as she turned around. Ning Qing had told her before that he'd help her deal with Han Yunqing as long as she betrayed the Chu clan. But Ning Qing had been vague all the time. He hadn't even told her how to deal with Han Yunxi or how to kidnap Han Yunqing. Now she understood that Ning Qing was just trying to cheer her up. Rather than wait for Ning Qing to make his move, it was better for her to come up with her own ideas. As long as Ning Qing cooperated, everything would be fine. On the surface, she was helping the Chu and Ning clans solve their problems, but in truth, she was putting Han Yunqing to death. She was certain that once Duanmu Yao found out that Han Yunqing was Empress Shui's murderer, she'd definitely make a fuss before Kenzo. Based on how much old Kenzo doted on Duanmu Yao, even Long Fei Yi wouldn't be able to protect Han Yunqing. Chu Qingge descended the stairs step by step, finally feeling better after 2 years of depression. She was waiting. It hadn't been easy for her to become Tianning's Empress Dowager, but she wasn't just going to take Han Yunqing's life. Long Fei Yi, one day, I, Chu Qingge, will have the right to stand shoulder to shoulder with you. Chu Qingge hadn't left long before Chu Tianyin arrived. He didn't agree with Chu Qingge's demand for equal footing, so he dropped to one knee as soon as he arrived. Greetings to your Highness Duke of Ning. His father and uncle were both in Ning Cheng's hands, while the Chu clan troops had surrendered. Ever since Ning Cheng had rescued him, Chu Tianyin had taken the stance of pledging his loyalty to him to the death. Ning Cheng was still leaning against the railing, but gave him a sidelong glance. He didn't allow him to rise. I haven't seen you around the army these past few days. Where did you go? I went around the borders of Yaoshui. Long Fei Yi only has 3,000 troops stationed there, Chu Tianyin replied honestly. What about the other troops? Ning Qing finally grew serious. They're all south of Yaoshui, but 3,000 troops are enough. He won't return Yaoshui prefecture to Western Zhou, Chu Tianyin said. Ning Qing laughed coldly. Obviously. Chu Tianyin hid his anger deep in his eyes as he lowered his head in silence. Has Duanmu Yao returned yet? Ning Qing asked next. No news yet. Empress Shui's death was suspicious. She had no injuries or illnesses, nor any signs of poison. It'll be difficult to convince her that an assassination attempt was behind it, Chu Tianyin added. you need to get involved in this matter. Ning Cheng was ordering him, not negotiating. He didn't give Chu Tianyin any leeway. It's been so many years. Have you found any traces of the Shadow Clan? Duke of Ning, do you have an idea about Empress Shui's death? Chu Tianyin probed. Unfortunately, Ning Cheng ignored him. Answer your lordship's question. The Shadow Clan. Only Gu Beiyue was left of the Shadow Clan. Gu Beiyue was his only hope. How could Chu Tianyin betray Gu Beiyue? He was still hoping to use Gu Beiyue to borrow Long Fei Ye's strength to bite back at Ning Cheng. From what he understood of Ning Cheng, the man would never let go of his father and uncle. The Chu clan troops would remain beneath his Ning clan troops, while the Nether clan would remain beneath the Di clan. He couldn't accept this. Ever since Chu Qingge's marriage alliance with Tianning, he'd fought against Long Fei Yi and tried all sorts of ways to bewitch Emperor Tianhui to prepare Chu Qingge's path. His father and uncle even found medical city's head elder Ling to do something as immoral as inducing labor. They'd spent so much time and effort and paid so much just so they could break away from Western Zhou's imperial clan and gain a foothold in Cloud Realm continent. They'd wanted to use Tianning as a stronghold and revive Western Qin in the name of gathering the world's heroes to seize power. But all of their efforts had ended up in Ning Cheng's hands. In other words, Ning Cheng had stepped over the corpses of his Chu clan's archers to ascend to the position of regent. He refused to accept this, much less accept it. He was very clear that the Chu clan's current strength was too weak to fight for anything else. The only thought in his heart was revenge. Even if he had to work with his former rival Long Fei Yi, he still wanted to drag Ning Cheng off his throne and stomp him beneath his feet. When his father and uncle found out that the Ning clan was the former Di clan, they hadn't told Gu Beiyue or Gu Beiyue's origins to Ning Cheng. He hadn't betrayed Gu Beiyue even after being tortured by Long Fei Yi, so he'd never betray Gu Beiyue in front of Ning Cheng. He stared into Ning Cheng's eyes and said seriously, "The Shadow Clan has long died out." A flash of grief flashed past Ning Cheng's eyes, but he pretended to be relaxed with a smile. What a pity. Do you have any leads on Western Qin's imperial orphan? Chapter 653. The only clue the Nether clan's Chu clan had was the phoenix birthmark. They'd suspected Han Yunqing in the past, but Su Xiaoyu's investigations had denied them. Chu Tianyin had already given up on finding Western Qin's imperial clan, but he'd never tell anyone about the phoenix birthmark, especially Ning Cheng. If his Chu clan couldn't get their hands on it, Ning Cheng should forget about it. In their past dealings, Ning Cheng had repeatedly expressed his sincerity to Western Qin's imperial clan. But in Chu Tianyin's eyes, he was nothing more than a hypocrite. Just like the Chu clan, he only wanted to use the emperor to command his vassals. Now that he was Tianning's regent, wasn't that exactly what he was doing? That damned Chu Qingge and that swaddling emperor were both under Ning Cheng's control. Tianning's true master had long been Ning Cheng. No. If I did, the Chu clan wouldn't have fallen to its current state, Chu Tianyin feigned self-mockery. Ning Cheng looked him up and down. Just then, they discussed a few things and said quite a few things. Just how much did Ning Cheng believe and how much did he suspect? Only he knew. Ning Cheng examined Chu Tianyin for a while before saying, "You may withdraw." Empress Shui's matter. Chu Tianyin trailed off. He didn't understand why Ning Cheng had suddenly stopped him from getting involved. Could it be that Ning Cheng suspected something? You don't need to worry about Empress Shui's matters. How can I ignore matters that concern my Chu clan troops? Chu Tianyin grew anxious. Don't worry, your lordship won't let the Chu clan suffer any losses, Ning Cheng said before waving a hand to dismiss Chu Tianyin. Chu Tianyin's suspicions grew, but he didn't dare say more. As soon as Chu Tianyin left, Ning Nuo walked out of his room. It was still chilly in the north, but he was still waving his folding fan like a refined and cultured gentleman. In reality, he was in a wretched state. Because Ning Jing had been looking for him everywhere, threatening to teach him a lesson, he had been hiding in the attic ever since he arrived in Shijing, not daring to show his face. Big brother, guess what Duan Muyao went to do? Ning Noa asked mysteriously. Speak. Ning Cheng was very impatient. Even in the face of his own hands, he was always so high and mighty, arrogant and noble. An elder brother was like a father. Moreover, he was the head of the clan. He had always treated Ning Noa, Ning Jing, and noble consort Ning in the same way he treated his other brothers in the clan. He treated them equally without exception. Duan Muyao ran off to help Zhang Qiuzi deal with the Tang clan. In the end, she was heavily injured. When Ning Noa said this, he chuckled. Ning Cheng's face was cold as he said in a deep voice, "Can you finish what you want to say?" Ning Noa didn't dare to keep him in suspense any longer. He quickly told him about Tang Li offering a humble apology and how Aunt Ru had accidentally injured Duan Muyao. Ning Cheng was puzzled. How could Duan Muyao be injured so easily? That's hard to say. Tang Zijin said that Aunt Ru only made a move because Duan Muyao insulted Ning Jing, Ning Noa explained. They want to join forces with us to bite back at Duan Muyao. That way, they can suppress Zhang Qiuzi. You still want to provoke Duan Muyao at a time like this? Ning Cheng asked thoughtfully. He couldn't help but feel that things between the Tang clan and Celestial Mountain were strange. He wondered if Long Fei Yi was involved. Does Big Brother mean to refuse them? Ning Noa could make his own decisions, but he had to ask for his big brother's opinion. Otherwise, he'd have to take responsibility again if Ning Jing asked. After some hesitation, Ning Qing said, set the wedding date as soon as possible. Tell Ning Jing to stay at the Tang clan for at least a year. Otherwise, she can never return to Cloud Realm Trade Consortium. Ning Noa could already imagine Ning Jing's reaction when she heard the order. Yes. I'll send someone to tell her right away. While Ning Cheng was plotting against Empress Shui, Long Fei Yi and Gu Beiyue were doing the same. Gu Beiyue immediately told Long Fei Yi about Chu Tiannin's secret missive as soon as he received it. Ning Cheng didn't let Chu Tiannin get involved. Could it be that he suspects him? Gu Beiyue asked. He's too slow, Long Fei Yi said. Chu Tiannin wanted to create fake evidence to frame Ning Cheng as Empress Shui's assassin. It was a good plan, but he was too slow to act. Or perhaps Ning Cheng has other ways to deal with Duan Muyao. Gu Beiyue mused. Long Fei's slender fingers tapped against the table as he fell silent. Abruptly, he laughed coldly. Tell Chu Tiannin that everything will proceed as planned. We'll deal with all changes without change. Gu Beiyue didn't understand. Your Highness, if that's the case, then Chu Tiannin might be useless as a chess piece. Ning Cheng had already told Chu Tiannin not to interfere. If Chu Tiannin made up evidence to frame Ning Cheng, wouldn't that be the same as telling Ning Cheng that he was a traitor? Let him figure it out himself. Your lordship has already said that if he succeeds, I'll let bygones be bygones and rescue the two Chu elders. If his abilities are limited, then your lordship won't accept useless people, Long Fei Yi said. Gu Beiyue sighed inwardly. His Highness Duke of Qin really is a ruthless man. He's only giving Chu Tiannin one chance. Success or failure, life or death, will all depend on it. Very good. This one will send him a letter by hawk tonight. Gu Beiyue agreed. Ning Cheng had already made preparations, but Long Fei Yi wanted everything to proceed as planned. Between the two of them, who would make the first move and who would come out on top would most likely be decided within the next few days. The peaceful western region of Cloud Realm continent had long since become turbulent. This time, it was no longer a contest between three powers, but a contest between Long Fei Yi and Ning Cheng. Long Fei Yi had just stepped out of Gu Beiyue's courtyard when he saw Han Yunqing and Mu Ling are walking towards him. Why are you here? Han Yunqing immediately grew uneasy. Aside from accompanying her to check on Gu Beiyue's injuries, Long Fei Yi had never come here alone. What was he doing here? Was he trying to make things difficult for Gu Beiyue? Mu Ling was also puzzled. Your Highness Duke of Qin, could it be that you're sick and are here to see a doctor? Han Yunqing grew even more nervous at these words. She hurried forward and took Long Fei Ye's hand to check his pulse. Where are you feeling unwell? Mu Ling had been here for a few days, but Gu was nowhere to be seen. Han Yunqing had specially accompanied Mu Ling out for a walk today and had just returned. Since she hadn't seen Long Fei Yi, she decided to check on Gu Beiyue's injuries first. The corners of Long Fei Ye's mouth twitched. It's nothing. This prince just came to see if Gu Qisha was here. I've been looking for him for a while now. Is he here? Mu Ling asked anxiously. Long Fei Yi couldn't be bothered with her. He turned to Han Yunqing and said, Are you going in? I'll wait for you here. Han Yunqing looked at Long Fei Yi, then at the courtyard. She had a feeling that something was wrong, but she couldn't put her finger on it. Let's go in and have a cup of tea. She tugged at Long Fei Ye's hand. Long Fei Yi had no choice but to follow her inside. Gu Beiyue was still in the courtyard, so he had clearly heard their conversation. When he saw Long Fei Yi being dragged inside by Han Yunqing, a trace of a warm and doting smile flitted across his eyes. He cherished a person. Seeing her being cherished was enough to satisfy him. Some love was between two people. It was selfish. On the other hand, some love was between one person. It was noble. Gu Beiyue belonged to the latter category. Your Highness Duke of Qin, esteemed Wang Fei, Miss Ling, Even though he was sitting in a wheelchair, he didn't lose his manners. Long Fei Yi took a seat at the side. As usual, he brewed tea without saying a word. Mu Ling didn't see Gu, so she slumped weakly on the stone table. Han Yunqing had long since gotten used to this. She earnestly inquired about and examined Gu Beiyue's injuries. Gu Beiyue was a doctor, but she was still worried and insisted on checking on him regularly. It takes 100 days for bones and tendons to heal. Even with the tendon-growing ointment, you still have to count the days. Han Yunqing sighed. You'll be able to recover by summer. The indifferent Gu Beiyue was somewhat agitated. It had been far too long since he'd stood up. Your Highness Duke of Qin, esteemed Wang Fei, if this one can stand up again, this one must first pay respects to the two of you in thanks. It wasn't clear whether Long Fei Yi was listening, but he didn't say anything. Han Yunqing smiled and said, You're too polite. Last time, you even saved the Duke of Qin's life. How can we thank you? Gu Beiyue had nothing to say. Han Yunqing found his bashful appearance rather cute. Long Fei Yi finally looked over. When he saw Gu Beiyue's appearance, his heart was filled with disdain. Gu Beiyue was a big liar. He must be crazy to allow Gu Beiyue to trick Han Yunqing like this. When he saw Long Fei Yi looking over, Gu Beiyue even gave him a meaningful glance. Long Fei Yi's expression immediately turned cold and he looked away. Fortunately, Han Yunqing didn't notice this scene. At this time, she was pondering something. She and Long Fei Yi were about to go to Tianshan Mountain. She didn't know if they'd be able to see Gu Beiyue stand up in time. Actually, she wanted to bring Gu Beiyue with her to Tianshan Mountain. Perhaps Gu Beiyue could cure the old man in Kenzo's insanity. If that happened, Duanmu Ya wouldn't dare to be so arrogant. After leaving Gu Beiyue's courtyard, Mu Ling went to look for her Qi brother. Han Yunqing said in a low voice, Long Fei Yi, Gu Beiyue is a trustworthy person. So? Long Fei Yi knew that Han Yunqing had something to say to him. Perhaps he can cure your master's insanity. Han Yunqing said seriously. Master won't be willing. Long Fei Yi said indifferently. He had wanted to invite a famous doctor from Medical City to treat his master, but he had been rejected. Han Yunqing nodded helplessly. All right, he didn't make things difficult for you about the treatment, did he? Han Yunqing had been thinking about this matter. It's over. Don't worry. Long Feiyi hated Duan Muyao's methods to begin with, so he didn't want to talk about it. Let's not talk about it anymore. Han Yunqing said, but she was still worried. She wasn't afraid that Duan Muyao would complain to Kenzo. In fact, she wanted to have a fight with Duan Muyao. She didn't believe that Kenzo wouldn't be able to tell right from wrong. Unexpectedly, 3 days later, Han Yunqing really did have to fight with Duan Muyao again. Kenzo wrote another letter to Long Feiyi. He didn't order Long Feiyi to do anything, but instead angrily rebuked Long Feiyi for condoning Han Yunqing's murder of Duan Muyao's mother, Empress Shui. He warned Long Feiyi that if Duan Muyao sought revenge on Han Yunqing, Long Feiyi wasn't allowed to interfere. Let the two women resolve it themselves. If Long Feiyi interfered, he would no longer recognize Long Feiyi as his disciple. After reading the letter, Han Yunqing was dumbfounded. She wanted to cry, but no tears came out. Your Highness, the one who killed Empress Shui, was clearly you. A complicated look flitted across Long Feiyi's eyes. So this is what Ning Cheng is doing. Despicable. Chapter 654. Long Feiyi was clearly the one who sent assassins to assassinate Empress Shui, but now Han Yunqing had become the scapegoat. Ever since she became Qin Wangfei, Han Yunqing had been wronged many times. She had long since gotten used to it. But this time, she looked at Long Feiyi with a silly smile. She didn't know what to do. No matter how Ning Cheng tried to frame her, she wasn't afraid. Empress Shui's corpse was still there, so the truth was still there. She wasn't a coroner, but she had plenty of ways to find out the true cause of Empress Shui's death. As long as she revealed the truth, she would be cleared of all charges. But now, she couldn't really reveal the truth. Because the true culprit was her husband, Long Feiyi. Han Yunqing leaned over the tea table, pretending to be serious as she stared at Long Feiyi. She didn't say anything, but it was clear that she was warning Long Feiyi. Long Feiyi, do as you see fit. Long Feiyi walked over and tousled Han Yunqing's bangs. Scared? Goading her. Han Yunqing glared at him but didn't answer. Long Feiyi laughed heartily. This prince will admit to it. Han Yunqing immediately slapped his hand away. What's there to admit without evidence? I won't admit it, and you're even less allowed to admit it. I won't admit it even if you beat me to death. Wasn't that exactly what Long Fei wanted her to say? Coldly, he ordered, someone, bring me brush and ink. Long Feiyi was about to reply to Elder Kenzo's letter. Han Yunqing immediately scooted over to take a look. She discovered that the usually taciturn Long Feiyi had written several lines this time. The gist of it was that Duan Muyao couldn't make unfounded accusations without evidence. If Duan Muyao could prove that Empress Shui was killed by Han Yunqing, then he wouldn't interfere in their grudge. However, if Duan Muyao was unable to provide any evidence, he would definitely pursue the matter against Duan Muyao for framing him. He would also plead with Elder Kenzo not to interfere. After Long Feiyi finished writing, Han Yunqing asked, "That's it?" "Okay." Long Feiyi sealed the box and even stamped his seal on it to make sure that no one would steal it. "Therefore, once your master agrees to your request, he will definitely agree to your request. Even if the real culprit is found to be you, your master can't intervene in this matter?" Han Yunqing asked jokingly. This was indeed a loophole. However, how could Long Feiyi be so stupid as to expose himself? After all, he did not want to anger his master Kenzo. Moreover, he did not want to offend the royal family of Western Zhou. Northernly hadn't made any moves in the past 6 months, but he had always been on guard against them. After all, Western Zhou was a force that couldn't be ignored when dealing with Northernly. After having the letter sent away, Han Yunqing and Long Feiyi did not act rashly. They were both people who could keep their cool. After all, Duanmu Yao had only reported to Elder Kenzo. The matter hadn't really blown up yet. It would be foolish of them to take the initiative to stir up trouble. Duanmu Yao was waiting for Long Fei Yi and Han Yunqing's reactions. She lived at the border between Yaoshui Commandery and Fenglin Commandery. She had already brought Empress Shui's corpse out of the Chu clan's barracks. She also had evidence that Han Yunqing had killed her mother. She was just waiting for news from her master so that she could deal the fatal blow to Han Yunqing. That woman not only stole her childhood sweetheart, her senior martial brother, but also killed the mother who loved her the most. If this could be tolerated, what could be tolerated? This time, no matter what price she had to pay, she would destroy Han Yunqing's reputation and make her pay with blood. Princess, a letter from Celestial Mountain. One of her servant girls brought over the letter. It wasn't from Elder Kenzo, but someone she'd arranged to stay by Kenzo's side. After reading the letter, Duanmu Yao knitted her brows. Has he lost his mind again? Her master had already received the Duke of Qin's reply, but he'd lost his mind and refused to read it himself. Neither did he allow anyone else to open it, so no one knew what her senior martial brother had written. Princess, the Duke of Qin wouldn't dare to defy Elder Kenzo. As this servant sees it, we should stick to the plan and finish the battle quickly so we can avenge esteemed Empress and rest in peace, the servant girl coaxed in a low voice. Cold, Duanmu Yao said, this princess is just giving master a heads up. Chu Qingga's evidence is so ample that even if the Duke of Qin wants to protect that slut, he won't be able to stop everyone's mouths. I refuse to believe that senior martial brother would offend the entire world for her sake. The more Duanmu Yao thought, the angrier she grew. She issued orders on the spot to reveal Han Yunqing's murder of Empress Shui to the public. 3 days later, she'd challenge Han Yunqing to a blood debt. At the same time, she asked the Duke of Qin why he'd allowed Han Yunqing to commit such heinous crimes while cooperating with Western Zhou. Once the news spread, the peaceful western regions grew lively again. Various factions began to pay attention to the matter. Chu Qingga's temper flared as soon as she heard the news. Ignoring the presence of her servants, she cursed, that brainless slut. With a brain like hers, she still hopes for the Duke of Qin's favor. She's dreaming for the wildest. Chu Qingga was the one who'd provided Duanmu Yao with the evidence against Han Yunqing. She only wanted Duanmu Yao to cause trouble for Han Yunqing, but she ended up dragging His Highness Duke of Qin down with her. Is Long Fei Yi someone she can question? Why should he give her an explanation? Despite her current predicament, all of Chu Qingga's hatred was still directed at Han Yunqing. She didn't hate Long Fei Yi at all, much less hurt him. Abruptly, the sound of a baby crying filled the room. Only then did Chu Qingga calm down. All of the servants around her were baffled. They couldn't understand the Empress Dowager's agitation, but none of them dared to ask. Head Elder Ling and Lady Lianxin had gone into the mountains to pick medicinal plants, leaving Chu Qingga to take care of the baby herself. Although she was filled with resentment, she still grew anxious at the sound of the baby's cries. She was about to enter the room when Ning Cheng showed up. As the Prince Regent, he could enter and leave Tianning's imperial harem as he pleased. No one dared to stop him. Today, he was dressed in dazzling gold robes, giving him a natural air of nobility. As soon as he stepped through the doors, his proud figure filled the room with oppressive pressure. Greetings to Your Highness Duke of Ning. May Your Highness Duke of Ning prosper. Everyone in the room fell to their knees. A few of the servant girls couldn't help but sneak a peek at him before quickly lowering their heads in fear. They couldn't help but love him. This man wasn't someone ordinary women could imagine, but all of the women in this room were filled with illusions. Chu Qingga turned her head and almost mistook Ning Cheng for Long Fei Yi. Even though she knew the man before her wasn't the one in her heart, she still stared at him blankly. Ning Cheng didn't know what Chu Qingga's gaze meant. He didn't like it, but he was too lazy to pay her any attention. He strode over. No matter how powerful the Prince Regent was, he still had to pay respects to the Empress Dowager. Unfortunately, the palace had no such customs after he came to West Jing. "Aya, what kind of wind is blowing today to bring your Highness Duke of Ning here?" Chu Qingge smiled. Ning Cheng murmured, "When you've used up that acupuncture needle, remember to return it to your lordship." So speaking, he turned to leave. "That's it?" Chu Qingge couldn't believe that Ning Cheng would come all the way here just to remind her of such a trivial matter. Among the evidence she'd given Duan Muyao was a needle that Han Yunqing had used before. Ning Cheng was the one who'd provided it. She assumed that Ning Cheng had found the needle just to frame Han Yunqing, but now that didn't seem to be the case. "Remember, if you lose it, your lordship will take responsibility," Ning Cheng warned as he walked away without looking back. "That needle is still useful. What else do you want to do?" Chu Qingge chased after him. She didn't want to miss a single thing that had to do with Han Yunqing. "Just do your job well. Why do you care so much?" Ning Cheng reprimanded cold. "Don't worry, I definitely won't disappoint you." Chu Qingge was confident in both herself and Duan Muyao. But in Ning Cheng's eyes, these two women were the same kind of fools. They wanted to scheme against Han Yunqi, but had no idea that their actions would affect Long Feiyi far more than Han Yunqing. Han Yunqing was Long Feiyi's official consort. How could Long Feiyi not know of her actions? Thus, anyone with half a brain wouldn't believe that Han Yunqing was the one who killed Empress Shui. They'd only suspect that the Long Feiyi was the culprit, or that the Long Feiyi had ordered Han Yunqing to do it. "Woman, why are you meddling in political affairs?" "Long Feiyi, take this." Ning Cheng gave a cold snort before walking away with his hands clasped behind his back. Slowly, his figure disappeared into the depths of the palace. Reality proved that Ning Cheng was right. Besides Duan Muyao challenging Han Yunqing, all the other powers began to suspect Long Feiyi. Western Zhou's Emperor Kangcheng couldn't sit still and personally wrote a long letter demanding an explanation from Long Feiyi. Otherwise, Western Zhou and the South Central Region's Commander-in-Chief's estate would never form an alliance. Even in Tianan country, Long Tianma and Mu Qinggu began to suspect Long Feiyi. Qin Wangfei would never kill Empress Shui for no reason. If such a thing really happened, it must have been the Duke of Qin's orders. Mu Qinggu had long felt moved by the injustice of Han Yunqing's actions. "As I see it, there's something fishy about all this. If the Duke of Qin really did make a move, he wouldn't have sent Qin Wangfei to do it," Long Tianma muttered to himself. General Mu didn't seem interested in the matter. He asked, "Qinggu, has there been any news from Northern Li's horse farms lately? We've received news that South City's horse farms are wantonly buying followers from the herdsmen." "There's been no news from the other two farms," Mu Qinggu replied honestly. General Mu said unhappily, "Do we need you to tell us something that everyone already knows? Keeping followers is just a pretense. Did you take it for real? It would take at least 3 years for followers to grow into battle horses. Last year, South City's horse farms had only lost mature war horses that could be used for 3 to 15 years. It wouldn't be as easy as keeping followers to fill the gap. How could Northern Li survive in Cloud Realm continent without war horses after 3 to 5 years? Mu Qinggu hung his head, afraid to utter a word. Unless Northern Li can get their horses, they won't get involved in the chaos in the West. If Northern Li doesn't meddle in the affairs of the West, it'll be the Duke of Qin and Ning Cheng's world. There'll be plenty of good shows between those two, just wait and see." General Mu said, before adding, "I'm afraid Duan Muyao was used by Ning Cheng as a spear for Empress Shui's affairs." Hearing this, Long Tianma and Mu Qinggu couldn't help but admire him. The older the ginger, the spicier it was. Long Tianma knew he was no match for Ning Cheng, so all he could do was hide in a corner and preserve his strength. Although Northern Li wouldn't get involved in the chaos in the West, the Northern Dynasty's emperors had ordered Jun Yixia to keep an eye on the situation there. Juni Xia might have been banished from the imperial clan, but he was still the right and left arm of the northern dynasty's emperors. He had been itching to join hands with Duanmu Yao for the chaos in the west, but his master's warning prevented him from taking action. Currently, he was playing chess with his master, Bai Yanqing. He couldn't help but ask, "Master, do you think Duanmu Yao can win this time?" Chapter 655. Could Duanmu Yao win? Bai Yanqing didn't seem to hear Juni Xia's question. He held the chess piece in one hand and stroked his beard with the other as he seriously pondered the game. Juni Xia was such an arrogant and insufferably arrogant person. But in front of his master, he was always obedient like a big boy. Seeing that his master didn't answer, he didn't dare to ask a second question no matter how curious he was. He could only wait quietly for his master to make his next move. Little junior sister Bai Yuqiao looked at Juni Xia from the sidelines and felt pity for him for some reason. In her eyes, Juni Xia was absolutely obedient and trusting of her master, but her master kept all sorts of secrets from her senior brother. Bai Yuqiao didn't understand why her master kept so many things from her senior brother. She secretly felt that it was unfair to him, but she never dared to say anything. She knew better than her senior brother how terrifying it was to betray her master. After a while, Bai Yanqing didn't make his move, but said mildly, "Whether she wins or loses depends on what she's competing on and how she's competing." Juni Xia rejoiced and quickly said, "Just this once, the matter of Empress Shui. Winning or losing doesn't depend on such trivial matters, but on the end. Just wait. Duanmu Yao will win," Bai Yanqing said lightly. The end? Could it be that master already has plans? Juni Xia asked in a low voice. As he saw it, his master had told him to get involved in Han Yunqing and Long Fei Ye's affairs not because he was afraid he'd cause trouble, but because he had other plans. Bai Yanqing didn't reveal anything, but asked, "Just wait. How long will it take to fill the gap in South City's horse farms?" Juni Xia grew gloomy. Master was always like this, changing the topic in the middle of a sentence. It made his heart itch. When Juni Xia didn't reply, Bai Qingyan gave him an unhappy glare before he obediently replied, "It'll take at least a year or so to make up for the shortfall. I've already contacted Cloud Realm Trade Consortium's horse merchants. If we can strike a deal with them, the shortfall won't be so severe," Juni Xia replied honestly. "Has the planting of herbs in the Snow Mountain been started?" Bai Yanqing asked again. "There are still some details to be discussed." Ning Jing, this woman, is really hard to deal with. Recently, she's been preparing for her wedding, so the Snow Mountain matter has been delayed. Juni Xia was also very busy during this period. Bai Yanqing only nodded and didn't comment on anything. He continued to play chess. Over the past few days, the matter with Empress Shui had only grown bigger and bigger, but Han Yunqing and Long Fei Yi had remained unmoved. They had neither expressed their stance nor made any public statements. As a result, everyone was even more curious about the truth of the matter. There were still 2 days before Duanmu Yao's challenge, but Han Yunqing was currently sitting in the courtyard, smiling foolishly at a table of letters. All of them were addressed to her. There were letters from the Tian and General Mu's estate, the South Central Region's Commander-in-Chief's estate, Pill Fiend Pharmacy, Medical City, Medicine City, and even the black market. All of the letters expressed their concern and reminded her to be careful of Duanmu Yao and avoid fighting her head-on. The letter from Medical City was written by Third Elder Shen, who said that if Han Yunqing was willing, he could recommend the best coroner in Cloud Realm Continent and come personally to assist with the autopsy. The letter from Medicine City was written by the King of Medicine himself. That old man who didn't care about worldly affairs actually knew about the matter as well. In the letter, he said that if Han Yunqing was willing, she could bring Empress Shui's body to the medicine hut so he could personally assist with the autopsy. The letter even included a greeting from the old man from Medicine requesting cave. Han Yunqing had always known that she didn't have good relations with people. She would offend people for no apparent reason and incur their hatred and enmity. Reading through the pile of letters, she suddenly realized that she had quite a few friends. She smiled at Long Fei Yi and said, "My relations with people seem pretty good. Does this count as having friends all over the world?" "This is called networking," Long Fei Yi remarked. Even he had to admit that Han Yunqing's connections in Cloud Realm continent over the years weren't to be underestimated. Esteemed Wang Fei has always had good relations with people. Before Gu Beiyue could finish, a black figure suddenly flew down from the sky. It was none other than Gu. He was dressed in black robes that covered his entire body except for his frivolous eyes. More accurately, he should be called Gu Qi Sha. Gu Qi Sha rushed towards Han Yunqing as soon as he touched the ground, but Long Fei Yi kicked him before he could even get close. Fortunately, he retreated in time. He was too anxious to argue with Long Fei to ask, "Poison Lass, is Duanmu Yao serious about coming to challenge us?" Han Yunqing didn't speak, but slowly turned to look into the room. Gu Beiyue was smiling while Long Fei Yi drank his tea. As long as Gu Qi Sha stayed away from Han Yunqing, he wouldn't bother with his business. Poison Lass, Gu Qi Sha wanted to ask more questions, but Mu Ling suddenly rushed out of the room and cried, "Your Excellency Pill Fiend." Besides Mu Ling, everyone else knew that Gu Qi Sha had been avoiding Mu Ling, on purpose for the past few days. Everyone remained silent, waiting for Gu Qi Sha to run away. Unexpectedly, Gu Qi Sha ignored Mu Ling, and didn't rush to leave. Instead, he asked Han Yunqing with concern, "Poison Lass, is that true?" Mu Ling, who was rushing over, stopped in her tracks when she saw this. Her joyous expression froze on her face as she stared blankly at Gu Qi Sha's anxious expression. She should be happy that he finally appeared, happy that he didn't run away as soon as he saw her. But why does my heart hurt so much? "It's true," Han Yunqing replied, then stood up and pulled Mu Ling over. She questioned Gu Qi Sha, "This lass has been waiting for you for days. You're really putting on airs, aren't you?" Gu Qi Sha ignored them and turned to Long Fei Yi. "Duke of Qin, are you really going to let Poison Lass fight that slut Duanmu Ya one-on-one?" Long Fei Yi couldn't be bothered to answer. Gu Qi Sha didn't need to worry about this matter. "We'll talk about it when she gets here. She's not even here yet, so who knows what kind of evidence she'll bring. If I don't admit it, what can she do to me?" After Han Yunqing explained, she changed the topic and said seriously, "Ling wants to talk to you about the Mu family. Madame Lien Xian's matter has dragged on for so long, shouldn't you give her an answer? The two of you should have a good talk. Also, I've given Ling the medicine tome the King of Medicine gave her. If there's anything she doesn't understand, please teach her. The two of you will be the pillars of Pill Fiend Pharmacy in the future." Only then did Gu Qi Sha look at Mu Ling. Mu Ling's heart was stifled, but she didn't show it on her face. She immediately put on a worshipful expression and smiled obsequiously at Gu Qi Sha. "Esteemed Senior Pill Fiend, I offended you last time at Pill Fiend Pharmacy. Please forgive me on account of esteemed Wang Fei and His Highness." Gu Qi Sha had long forgotten that this girl had challenged him on Pill Fiend Pharmacy's grand opening day. He didn't say anything and simply nodded before sitting down next to Gu Beiyue. Mu Ling immediately leaned over and respectfully poured him a cup of tea. "Esteemed Senior, please be careful. It's hot." Gu Qi Sha raised a brow at her and said in a strange tone, "You're making me sound old. How about I call you Master?" Mu Ling hurriedly asked. She clearly wanted to take him as her master. Gu Qi Sha picked up a cup of tea and drank it under his black robes, pretending not to hear her. However, Mu Ling was even more ruthless. She immediately knelt down and kowtowed to him. "If Master doesn't object, please accept this bow from your disciple." Gu Qi Sha spat out the tea in his mouth. "I didn't agree." "Get up." Mu Ling blinked her large eyes innocently. "But I've already kowtowed. What should I do?" Would he still have any freedom if he accepted a disciple like this? Who knows when she'll discover the truth? Gu Qi was truly frightened. He earnestly said, I'll kowtow back to you, alright? Mu Ling's eyes were wet, but she still laughed out loud. Senior really knows how to joke. If Senior isn't willing, then forget it. It wasn't clear how many people present noticed the tears in Mu Ling's eyes, but Han Yunqing did. Looking at this stubborn girl, Han Yunqing's heart ached. Perhaps it was because she saw a shadow of herself in the past, or perhaps it was because blood was thicker than water, or perhaps it was because they hit it off. However, Han Yunqing knew that there was only so much she could do to help Gu Qi. If she continued to help Gu Qi, it would only backfire. When it came to matters of love, both parties had to be willing. Although she was touched by Mu Ling's willingness, she couldn't possibly force or scheme against Gu Qi. Long Fei Yi brought over a cup of tea, interrupting Han Yunqing's train of thought. She looked at him, but he was busy brewing tea and didn't notice her. From this angle, the curve of his face was so cold that it was penetrating, exuding a cold arrogance that kept everyone at arm's length. It had been more than 3 years, but he was still the same person from 3 years ago. Not much had changed. Han Yunqing sighed in her heart. Long Fei Yi, fortunately, you also like me. Since Mu Ling had already said so, how could Gu Qi not agree? He smiled strangely. Forget it, forget it. Then, can Senior give me some pointers on the King of Medicine's ancient medical book? Who said that Mu Ling had given up? She still had to work hard. Han Yunqing felt heartache, but she also wanted to laugh. Gu Qi's expression had already darkened, but fortunately, his face was hidden by his mask. Alright, alright. If you don't understand, just ask. Why are you being so polite? Even if Gu Qi agreed, Mu Ling might not be able to find him for guidance in the future. Thank you, Senior. Mu Ling was still very happy. She actually took out the medical book on the spot and even included a thick notebook. Senior, I've already finished reading this book and memorized everything that I didn't understand. There are already more than 100 parts in this first book that I don't understand. Let's just ask these questions for today, Mu Ling said seriously. Before Gu Qi could speak, Gu Beiyue said indifferently, this one is tired. You guys go ahead. This one will take his leave first. As soon as Gu Beiyue left, Long Fei Yi stood up, followed by Han Yunqing. She smiled and said, we still have matters to attend to. You guys can take your time discussing them. Gu Qi originally wanted to say something, but this time, he fell silent. Just like that, Mu Ling continued to pester Gu Qi for the next 2 days, humbly asking for guidance and taking notes. After 2 days of interaction, Gu Qi actually dispelled his previous suspicions. This was because other than asking about the medical book, Mu Ling didn't bother him at all. Perhaps he was overthinking things. Mu Ling was only interested in learning and hadn't discovered his secret. There was no harm in teaching this little girl. In any case, all of Pill Fiend Pharmacy's matters would be taken care of by her in the future. He wasn't going to guard Pill Fiend Pharmacy to the death. Early in the morning 2 days later, Duan Muyao really did come to challenge him. Chapter 656. Early in the morning, Duan Muyao was standing by the gates of Long Fei Ye's Yaoshui estate, surrounded by a crowd of onlookers. Long Fei Ye's estate was located in the heart of the county town's downtown district, hidden in a deep alleyway. It was very quiet and secluded amidst the hustle and bustle. Its outer walls were very low-key and didn't attract much attention. It was all thanks to Duan Muyao that so many people had gathered here today. Not only had she revealed the location of the estate, but she'd also brought a bunch of people with her to mix in with the crowd. These people were here to act as messengers. If Han Yunqing said a single wrong word today, they'd spread it all over Cloud Realm continent with embellishments. Moreover, Duan Muyao even assigned a few people to deliver the news to Celestial Mountain. Not only did she want Master Kenzo to hate Han Yunqing, but everyone on Celestial Mountain to hate Han Yunqing as well. She wanted to make it so that Han Yunqing couldn't climb Celestial Mountain. Before she knew that Han Yunqing was her mother's murderer, Duan Muyao was already thinking of ways to smear Han Yunqing's name. Now she'd stop at nothing. Currently, Han Yunqing's group was standing on the highest floor of the estate. They couldn't see Duan Muyao from here, but they could see the figures of many onlookers. Long Fei and Han Yunqing stood in the middle, one dressed in black robes with a cold, heroic air between his brows. The other was dressed in a pink-purple silk dress, her style magnificent beyond compare. Gu Beiyue stood to Long Fei Ye's left. Although he was in a wheelchair, he still gave off a heroic and elegant air. Gu Qisha stood to Han Yunqing's right, his black robes draped over his body like a mysterious mystery. Mu Ling stood next to Gu Qisha in her gorgeous red robes. Chu Shifeng stood 3 steps behind Long Fei Yi, his hand resting on his sword in a respectful manner. The group of people standing on the balcony made for a beautiful sight that was even more beautiful than a garden full of spring flowers. Unfortunately, none of them looked happy, especially Long Fei Yi. He, who always liked peace and quiet, hated the kind of disturbance at the door the most. Han Yunqing observed the surrounding roofs and attics. She saw that there was no one in sight, but she knew that there must be a lot of people who came to watch the show. After all, this matter had been blown out of proportion. After all, the disparity between her and Duan Muyao's martial prowess was too great. Many people had come to laugh at her. Gu Qisha stood on the railing, his eyes dark as he said, "Poison lass, I'm going to teach her a lesson first. I'll break the tendons in her arms and legs before you go out and fight her one-on-one." Was Gu Qisha here to make a fool of himself? Unfortunately, other than Mu Linger, no one else laughed. There was still half an incense stick's worth of time before Duan Muyao's challenge time arrived. Gu Qisha turned back to look at her. "Poison lass, if you don't answer, I'll take it as a yes. Do you want me to plead guilty?" Han Yunqing rolled her eyes at him. "You were the ones who killed him. So what if you admit it? Do you think His Highness Duke of Qin is afraid of Western Zhou's imperial family?" Gu Qisha retorted. Was Gu Qisha here to ask for a beating? Long Fei Yi had unknowingly turned to stare at them coldly. He didn't make a move, nor did he speak. Instead, he stared coldly at Mu Linger, who was standing next to Gu Qisha. Gu Qisha immediately shut his mouth. He was wary of the threat in Long Fei Ye's eyes, but he didn't know that if Long Fei Yi and Han Yunqing admitted to the crime, it wouldn't be as simple as offending Western Zhou's imperial family. Gu Qisha didn't know much about Duan Muyao's backer on Celestial Mountain. Neither Long Fei Yi nor Han Yunqing had brought up the matter, so neither Gu Beiyue nor Gu Qisha knew how they were going to deal with it. Soon enough, it was time to leave. Long Fei Yi naturally accompanied Han Yunqing out of the room, followed by Gu Qisha and Mu Linger. Gu Beiyue didn't follow them, but said, "Esteemed Wang Fei, it's inconvenient for this one to move around, so I won't be going out. Please be careful." "Don't worry, it's just a small matter," Han Yunqing smiled. Before they left, Long Fei Yi instructed, "Chu Shifeng, escort Dr. Gu back to his rooms to rest." Gu Qisha couldn't help but feel doubtful. This doesn't seem like Gu Beiyue's style at all. Since when did Long Fei Yi become so humane? Did something happen between Long Fei Yi and Gu Beiyue while he was gone? Since he was in a hurry to leave, Gu Qisha didn't think too much about it. How could Long Fei Yi be humane? He'd probably only be a lover for the rest of his life. He'd told Chu Shifeng to escort Gu Beiyue because the man was supposed to help Gu Beiyue get in touch with Chu Tianyin. Although he didn't help Han Yunqing on the surface, he'd put in a lot of thought behind the scenes. As soon as it was time for the challenge, a commotion broke out at the gates. But this time, Han Yunqing didn't give anyone a chance to criticize her. She opened the gates on time. The rowdy crowd seemed to have been splashed with cold water as they fell silent. As soon as Duanmu Yao saw Han Yunqing, she angrily unsheathed her sword and pointed it at her. Han Yunqing, what grudge did my imperial mother have against you that you'd kill her? If I don't kill you today, how am I supposed to let my imperial mother rest in peace? As she spoke, she ignored Long Fei Yi, who'd come out behind Han Yunqing, and charged viciously at Han Yunqing with her sword. Slut, hand over your life. Despite the approaching danger, Han Yunqing's expression remained calm and unmoving. She crossed her arms in front of her chest and stood tall and poised, full of aura. Everyone forgot about Duanmu Yao's sword and only felt that this woman had the bearing of a queen. It was difficult to conceal her elegance and dignity. Seeing that Han Yunqing wasn't dodging, Duanmu Yao's eyes flashed with ruthlessness. She lightly tapped the ground with her foot and used the momentum to move with her sword, which was as fast as an arrow. In a flash, both she and her sword turned into shadows, their speed too fast for anyone to react to. Everyone knew that Duanmu Yao had received Kenzo's teachings and that her sword skills were exquisite, but they didn't expect her to be so strong. In the blink of an eye, the sharp edge of her sword had already reached Han Yunqing's heart. It's over. In that instant, everyone's minds went blank. They were all very surprised. Everyone thought that Long Fei Yi would intervene, but given the current situation, even Long Fei Yi wouldn't be able to stop her in time. Who would have thought that a miracle would happen? Long Fei Yi hadn't intervened and Duanmu Yao had retreated. Duanmu Yao could have killed Han Yunqing, but she'd retreated on her own accord. In the blink of an eye, she was already 10 steps away from Han Yunqing. She lost her balance and fell to the ground, coughing up a mouthful of black blood. What's going on? Everyone was dumbfounded. Even Gu Qi Sha and Mu Ling were dumbfounded. Long Fei Yi hadn't intervened, so what had Han Yunqing done? When did she become so powerful? Everyone took a closer look and saw that Han Yunqing was holding a golden needle in her mouth. It didn't look like the medical needles she usually used, but more like a concealed weapon dipped in poison, emitting a faint glow. Those in the know immediately understood what was going on. Han Yunqing was truly cunning, but also truly brave. She'd allowed Duanmu Yao to close in, but had used a poisonous needle to threaten her. Duanmu Yao only had 2 choices in the face of such a situation. One was to injure both of them and die, and the other was to retreat. If Duanmu Yao hadn't retreated, the needle in Han Yunqing's mouth would have taken her life at such a close distance. And if Duanmu Yao had retreated, she wouldn't have been able to unleash her sword energy. Instead, she would have been hit by her own energy instead. Duanmu Yao didn't have the courage to make an exception and retreat in her panic. She'd already spat out black blood, so her internal injuries weren't light at all. In reality, Duanmu Yao had already suffered internal injuries. Now, she'd suffered even more internal injuries. If the duel had started, Han Yunqing would have defeated Duanmu Yao in one move. With Duanmu Yao's current strength, she wouldn't have been able to deal with Han Yunqing's pear blossom teardrop rain. Everyone was dumbfounded when they realized what had happened. No one had expected the duel between these 2 women to end up like this. Hadn't it not even started yet? How could it have ended so quickly? Could Han Yunqing not be so scary? Han Yunqing held the poisonous needle in her mouth as she looked down at Duanmu Yao from above. Even men couldn't compare to her carefree and uninhibited aura. Her appearance was the symbol of first class, but her temperament and her elegance were even more unmatched. Gu Qi Sha and Mu Ling were also dumbfounded. They hadn't expected Han Yunqing to be so strong. Suddenly, someone in the crowd shouted, Han Yunqing is shameless. She used poison. How despicable. Han Yunqing narrowed her eyes and looked towards the source of the voice. She coldly said, "Who said that? If you have the guts, come out now." Her fierce shout silenced the already quiet crowd. But then, there was someone who wasn't afraid of death and actually stood out. It was a girl around 14 or 15 years old. Her background couldn't be discerned from her attire, but she was actually Duan Muyao's maid. I said it. The little girl's expression was haughty, a little like Duan Muyao's usual haughtiness. This is between Duan Muyao and me. What does it have to do with you? Who do you think you are? Han Yunqing coldly asked. Her words rendered the sharp-tongued little girl speechless. After a while, she finally replied, I'm speaking up for Miss Duanmu. Can't I? Are you feeling guilty? How is it unfair? Han Yunqing asked patiently. She hadn't expected Duan Muyao to use violence today, only words. If Duan Muyao wanted to slander her, she definitely wouldn't give her a chance. She definitely wouldn't leave any evidence behind. You used poison. You just poisoned Miss Duanmu. The little girl said righteously. What kind of logic was this? Han Yunqing laughed. Who said I can't use poison? Who? Before she could finish speaking, the little girl hastily interjected, poison is a heretical art. It's used to harm people and is despised by righteous people like us. It's also forbidden by medical city. You used this kind of evil thing to deal with Miss Duanmu. You're simply despicable and shameless. Han Yunqing angrily asked, you clearly know that this princess only knows how to use poison and not martial arts. As the proud disciple of Tianshan Kenzo, you called out my name and chased me all the way to my front door to challenge me to a duel, yet you still don't allow me to use poison. Isn't this even more despicable and shameless? She was so angry that she wanted to laugh. She looked at Duan Muyao, who was sitting on the ground, and coldly snorted. Duan Muyao, if you can't afford to lose, then don't come. Duan Muyao's internal organs were in pain from her own sword aura, and her conception and governing vessels were blocked. She had just managed to catch her breath when she heard Han Yunqing's words. She was so angry that her true qi almost flowed backwards and caused her cultivation to go berserk. She supported herself with her sword and stood up. How did I lose? So it's fine for me to use poison and hidden weapons? Han Yunqing asked again. Duan Muyao knew better than anyone the extent of her internal injuries. In her current condition, she was no match for the Tang sect's hidden weapons. She still hadn't fully recovered from her shock, so how did she end up like this? Duan Muyao, are you admitting defeat? Or are you going to continue? Han Yunqing asked coldly. Although she didn't intend to accept the duel or admit her guilt, Duan Muyao had attacked her as soon as she came up. She had to determine a winner. So what if you're the disciple of Tianshan Kenzo? Chapter 657. So what if she was Tianshan Kenzo's disciple and a martial arts prodigy with exceptional talent? Wasn't he still defeated by a trash like Han Yunqing in one move? To be exact, it wasn't just one move. Han Yunqing hadn't even made a move. All she did was spit out half of the poison needle she'd hidden in her mouth. Duan Muyao had scared herself and immediately retreated to harm herself. Who knew how Duan Muyao's people would twist the truth and spread the rumors? In any case, Long Fei Yi had already ordered people to spread the truth of the matter, even to Celestial Mountain. After all, Tianshan Kenzo was the head of the Wulin Alliance. Kenzo's disciples had always been proud of Celestial Mountain and thought highly of themselves. If they knew that Duan Muyao had been defeated by someone who didn't know any martial arts, they would probably curse her for being a disgrace to Tianshan Kenzo. Duan Muyao, I'll take your silence as an admission of defeat. Han Yunqing asked again. Duan Muyao was extremely sullen. Everything had been well planned. Her senior brother wouldn't make a move out of fear of her master. She would beat up Han Yunqing first, then take out the evidence of her murder and demand an eye for an eye. Who knew things would turn out like this? Was she dreaming or not? Damn it! Han Yunqing, I'm not here to compete with you. Duan Muyao changed the subject and said coldly, "I'm not here to discuss victory or defeat with you today. I'm here to take your life and avenge my imperial mother." With a wave of her sword, 10 sword maidens stepped out from the crowd. Long Fei recognized the 10 swordswomen at a glance. These were Duan Muyao's personal swordsmen who'd been raised on Celestial Mountain for years. Their skills in the sword weren't low, and their combined strength was enough to match Duan Muyao's own skills. Duan Muyao was determined to kill Han Yunqing. Long Fei's icy eyes slowly narrowed into slits, revealing a frightening killing intent. Han Yunqing seemed to sense Long Fei's anger. She retreated to his side and quietly took hold of his clenched fists from behind, comforting him in silence. Long Fei actually calmed down quite a bit. In fact, Long Fei could rest assured that Han Yunqing was no longer the Han Yunqing of the past. In the past, Han Yunqing had always been afraid that the Tianning imperial clan would make things difficult for her. She was even more afraid that a single misstep would ruin Qin Wangfei's reputation and offend His Highness Duke of Qin. And now, her greatest fear had become her greatest backer. What was there for her to be afraid of? Duan Muyao, one-on-one duels aren't just for show. Are you going back on your word? Han Yunqing asked with a smile. She did not give Duan Muyao an explanation. It's fine if you want to go back on your word. So what if it's a group fight? It's not like I don't have people on my side. At her words, everyone turned to look at His Highness Duke of Qin. Although His Highness Duke of Qin was standing there expressionlessly with no intention of making a move, everyone's hearts still raced in their chests. With His Highness Duke of Qin here, there was no need to talk about one-on-one duels or group fights. His Highness Duke of Qin alone was enough to sweep away Duan Muyao's group. Naturally, Duan Muyao was fearful. Han Yunqi, she said angrily, this princess came here today for revenge. Don't talk nonsense. No one's going to fight you one-on-one or group fights you. Han Yunqing sighed. Then just what do you want to do? You were the one who challenged me to a one-on-one duel. You even brought a bunch of helpers. If you don't want to fight me one-on-one or group fights, do you want this Wang Fei to stand there and let you chop me up? Ha! Gu Qisha couldn't help but laugh out loud. Much of the crowd laughed as well. In Han Yunqing's eyes, Duan Muyao's actions were truly laughable. There was no need for Long Fei to send people to spread the news. Naturally, there would be people who would spread the news. Duan Muyao was bound to lose face. Duan Muyao flew into a rage out of humiliation. She had clearly come here to avenge herself, so how did things end up like this? Men, get him. Kill her. She roared. The 10 sword maidens unsheathed their swords, and several black-clothed swordsmen appeared out of thin air to protect Han Yunqing. Han Yunqing didn't understand, but Gu Qisha and Mu Ling were shocked. They could sense the killing intent of these 10 swordsmen. Their martial arts were definitely much more powerful than Duan Muyao's 10 sword maidens. Duan Muyao could tell that these black-clothed swordsmen weren't simple. She shouted angrily, "Senior martial brother, Han Yunqing killed my imperial mother. I don't ask you to uphold justice for me, your junior martial sister, but I beg you not to protect her. You should also give my imperial father an explanation for this matter, and give my Western Zhou citizens an explanation." Long Fei said, "Where's the evidence? You slandered this prince's beloved consort for no reason. This prince wants an explanation from you. If you can't provide any evidence, don't blame this prince for being impolite." Tears welled up in Duan Muyao's eyes. Aggrieved, she took out a golden needle from her sleeve and held it up for everyone to see. "This is a golden needle found in my imperial mother's body. It's poisonous. This golden needle is specially used by Han Yunqing when she's practicing medicine. Aside from her, no one else has it." The golden needle in Duan Muyao's hand was indeed the same one that Han Yunqing usually used. This was a medical needle she had brought from the modern era. Its material, function, and shape were all different from those used in the ancient era. It had to be said that this thing was indeed a piece of evidence. Aside from special circumstances, Han Yunqing would only use this kind of medical needle when she was saving lives. Moreover, she would always disinfect it and put it away after use. However, there were a few times when she had dropped it in an emergency. Where had Duan Muyao gotten the one in her hand? Chu Tianyin was already planning to rely on Long Fei Yi and was currently undergoing Long Fei Ye's tests. There was no reason for him to give Duan Muyao something so important. Besides Chu Tianyin, who else could have gotten their hands on her needle? Was it Chu Qingge or Ning Cheng? Where did they get this golden needle from? Han Yunqing was too lazy to ponder the question any longer. If the other side wanted to frame her, why wouldn't they have enough evidence? Han Yunqing, tell me, is this needle yours or not? Duan Muyao asked loudly. Yes. When did you steal something from me? Give it back to me. Han Yunqing was even more self-righteous than her. You. Duan Muyao got angry every time she spoke to Han Yunqing. She was about to die from anger. You used a needle to poison my imperial mother. What else do you have to say for yourself? Duan Muyao asked again. You stole my needle and accused me of poisoning you. What do you think I have to say for myself? Han Yunqing retorted. Han Yunqing, you're still quibbling. Duan Muyao was about to spit out blood. Today you brought a needle and accused me of killing your imperial mother. Tomorrow you brought a hidden needle and accused me of killing your entire family, right? Han Yunqing asked again. Silence fell upon the scene. No one dared to interrupt. Duan Muyao was so angry that her breathing grew ragged as she gasped for breath. The coroners already found out that my mother was poisoned to death. Moreover, there are people in the Chu clan army who saw you appear around the barracks that night with their own eyes. Both the witnesses and evidence were present. If these witnesses and evidence were found by a third party, then Han Yunqing would indeed be guilty according to Cloud Realm Continent's laws. Unfortunately, these witnesses and evidence came from Duan Muyao's side, so it was highly suspicious that they were forged. Han Yunqing couldn't be bothered to argue with them about the validity of the witnesses and evidence. With Duan Muyao's pestering nature, there was no point in arguing with them. She had long discussed a plan with Long Fei Yi to kill two birds with one stone. They only needed to prove that the needle was a false accusation. There was no need to uncover the true cause of Empress Xue's death. As long as they could prove that the needle was a false accusation, then Duan Muyao would naturally suspect the person who gave her the needle. Once her attention was diverted, the matter would have nothing to do with them. Which coroner did you find to conduct the autopsy? Han Yunqing asked again. Lin Su from the Peace Pavilion. Duan Muyao replied loudly. The Peace Pavilion was a profit-making organization that provided all sorts of autopsy services to the imperial court and the common people. Lin Su could be considered the head of the Peace Pavilion and had a resounding reputation. I don't believe him. Han Yunqing said coldly. Unless you can find someone to do a new autopsy and prove that Empress Xue really did die from poison and that the needle was the cause, this Wang Fei won't admit it. Chu Qingge had put in plenty of effort on Duan Muyao's side. She even bribed Lin Su to do the autopsy himself, so Duan Muyao trusted Chu Qingge without a doubt. It doesn't matter. This princess wants you to accept it wholeheartedly. Duan Muyao was brimming with confidence. Then find Western Zhou's former coroner from the justice courts, Chao Tong, Grand Coroner Chao. Han Yunqing said slowly so that everyone present could hear her clearly. Everyone was frightened by her words. They couldn't help but suspect that Duan Muyao was here to slander Han Yunqing. Western Zhou's justice courts would never favor Han Yunqing. They'd definitely tell the truth based on facts. Meanwhile, Grand Coroner Chao Tong was Cloud Realm Continent's #1 coroner. His skills at autopsies were top-notch and his reputation was unquestionable. If Han Yunqing dared to invite him here, then it meant she wasn't guilty at all. Duan Muyao laughed out loud. Han Yunqing, stop pretending. You know full well that Chao Tong's retired for years. There's no way you can invite him here. And if I can? Han Yunqing retorted. What a joke. Duan Muyao still couldn't believe it. Chao Tong had solved many major cases for Western Zhou, but he'd retired for years due to personal reasons. Her imperial father had once sent the crown prince to invite him, but he'd failed. What was Han Yunqing to do? Grand Coroner Chao is already on his way here. He'll arrive in 2 days. Duan Muyao, if you're still a filial daughter who wants to know how your imperial mother died, then hurry and bring her body here, Han Yunqing said seriously. Duan Muyao finally realized she wasn't joking and was stunned. A frightening thought flashed through her mind. Could it be that Han Yunqing wasn't the culprit? Was she being used by Chu Qingge? The Chu clan was the real culprit. Duan Muyao quickly recovered her wits. She refused to believe her own suspicions. She was certain that Han Yunqing was the real culprit, and that Han Yunqing was just scaring her. She said fiercely, "Fine. 2 days later, I'll make you accept it wholeheartedly. A life for a life." 2 days later, Chao Tong really did show up at the Yaoshui estate. Han Yunqing had only been able to invite Chao Tong because 3rd Elder Shin of Medical City had helped her in secret. As an elder of Medical City, 3rd Elder Shin couldn't openly help Han Yunqing, so Chao Tong didn't reveal his relationship with 3rd Elder Shin. Instead, he claimed to be an old official of Western Zhou and vowed to investigate the cause of Empress Shue's death. "Princess, don't worry. This one definitely won't let esteemed Empress die in peace." Chao Tong continued to call Duan Muyao princess with sincerity. Duan Muyao's resolute heart wavered again. She nodded and said, "My imperial mother's body is right there in the courtyard at the end of the alley. Let's go." Everyone followed Chao Tong out, with Long Fei Yi and Gu Qisha accompanying Han Yunqing. Gu Qisha murmured, "Did you bribe Chao Tong?" Han Yunqing murmured back, "It's already good enough that we managed to invite him." "You can't bribe him. Then aren't you afraid that he'll reveal the truth?" Gu Qisha grew alarmed. After all, it wasn't Han Yunqing who killed Empress Shui, but Long Fei Yi's men. His title as the world's #1 coroner wasn't just for show. Where did Long Fei Yi and Han Yunqing get their self-confidence from? What medicine were they selling in their gourds? Chapter 658. Han Yunqing hadn't bribed Chao Tong, but wasn't she afraid that he'd expose the truth? Gu Qisha wasn't the only one puzzled. Ning Cheng was curious as well. He knew Chao Tong couldn't be bribed, and he was certain that Long Fei Yi's men had killed Empress Shui. Where did Long Fei Yi and Han Yunqing get their confidence from? After Empress Shui's death, Chu Tianyin had found plenty of coroner's examiners to examine her body, but none of them were able to find the true cause of death. What was the real cause of death? Were Long Fei Yi and Han Yunqing so sure that Chao Tong wouldn't be able to find out the truth? Ning Cheng's gaze was fixed on Han Yunqing's back the entire time. His lips curved into a mischievous grin. Even when Han Yunqing's figure was swallowed up by the crowd, he still wanted to see more. He'd disguised himself and blended into the crowd, accompanied by a few servants in disguise. They were all puzzled. His Highness Duke of Ning had plenty of work to do, so why had he traveled non-stop for 2 days and 2 nights just to come to Yaoshui himself? The Bailey Trade Consortium had urged him multiple times to attend Ning Jing's wedding, but he'd refused every time. It wasn't like he could show his face in person, so what was the difference between watching the crime scene and sitting in the palace waiting for news? Empress Shui's corpse was placed in the courtyard at the end of the alley. Duan Muyao wouldn't go so far as to reveal her mother's corpse to the public, so all unrelated people were kept outside the gates. Ning Cheng and a few of his retainers silently left the crowd until their figures vanished from the rooftops. Empress Shui's body was placed in the center of the courtyard, preserved in a specially made coffin. Duan Muyao stood by the coffin, her face ashen and sorrowful. She still regretted not leaving the mountains sooner to save her mother. She'd held on to her father's hopes in the past, believing that he loved her mother so dearly that he'd do anything to save her. But reality proved that her father still loved his country more than anything else. The Chu clan was the main culprit behind her mother's death. Once she dealt with Han Yunqing, she wouldn't spare anyone from the Chu clan, including Chu Qingge. Under everyone's watchful eyes, Duan Muyao carefully opened the coffin. Other than Long Fei Yi, who did not move, everyone present came forward to take a look. Long Fei Yi was not afraid of this kind of thing, he just did not like it. It had been almost 2 months since Empress Shui had passed away. If not for the low temperature at the end of winter and early spring, coupled with the nourishment of medicine, her corpse would have already started to wax. Although it had been nourished with expensive medicinal herbs, and the corpse did not emit a strange smell, nor did it show any signs of liquefaction, it had long been deformed. Its face and hands were covered with livor mortis, and the degree of decay in its body could not be seen with the naked eye. Only a professional would be able to tell how badly the corpse had decayed. Qiao Tong only glanced at the corpse, a hint of helplessness in his eyes. He wasn't in a hurry to examine it, so he asked, "Princess Yao, may I take a look at that golden needle first?" "Of course." Duan Muyao carefully handed the needle over. "There's still poison on the tip. Be careful." Qiao Tong held the golden needle and examined it carefully. "What kind of poison is this?" Before Duan Muyao could speak, Han Yunqing cut in. "It's sky scorpion poison. It doesn't matter if you touch it. As long as you don't get stabbed, you won't be poisoned." Duan Muyao gave a cold snort. "So you still remember?" Han Yunqing was too lazy to argue with her. Han Yunqing knew that Duan Muyao wouldn't believe her no matter what she said. She had invited Qiao Tong here so he could speak up for her. "Where did you find this needle?" Qiao Tong asked next. From the bottom of her foot, Chu Qingge had told Duan Muyao all this. "So, Princess Yao believes that Empress Shui died from poison?" Qiao Tong asked seriously. "Yes, it was Han Yunqing who used this needle to poison her." Duan Muyao didn't forget to point out Han Yunqing's identity. She spoke as if she'd seen it with her own eyes. Qiao Tong nodded and asked, "Princess Yao, this one doesn't recognize poisons, so I specially brought a poison doctor with me. Would it be possible to let him in?" Qiao Tong's reputation were there. Even if Han Yunqing had invited him here, Duan Muyao trusted him enough to agree without a second thought. The poison doctor examined the needle, then Empress Shui's foot. "This is sky scorpion poison," he said seriously. "Anyone poisoned by it will die within 3 steps. Han Yunqing, you're still trying to quibble?" Duan Muyao raged. Han Yunqing snorted disdainfully and didn't answer. The poison doctor hurriedly explained, "Princess Yao, this one can only confirm 2 points. Firstly, the poison on the golden needle is scorpion poison. Secondly, Her Majesty the Empress' foot was poisoned by the needle and was indeed poisoned. As for whether esteemed Wang Fei died from sky scorpion poison, this one." Poison doctor said as he looked awkwardly at Qiao Tong. Qiao Tong waved his hand, indicating that he could leave. "Grand Coroner Qiao, what do you mean by this?" Duan Muyao didn't understand. To reply, "Princess, esteemed Empress Shui's passed away a long time ago, there's no point in examining her body," Qiao Tong said tactfully, but everyone understood his meaning. Generally speaking, there was no point in examining a corpse after 7 days of death. No matter how well Empress Shui's body was preserved, it was impossible to examine it. "Princess Yao, from the evidence we currently have, it's very likely that esteemed Empress Shui died from poison. However, because there's no way to conduct an in-depth examination, this one can't come to a conclusion," Qiao Tong said seriously. Duan Muyao knitted her brows. "What did you say?" Qiao Tong was still serious. Princess Yao, esteemed Empress Shui was indeed poisoned, but this one can't confirm whether she died from poison. I hope Princess Yao will reconsider and not wrongly accuse a good person. Let the true culprit go. Duanmu Yao's gaze turned complicated. She looked suspiciously at Han Yunqing, but Han Yunqing didn't say anything and allowed her to look. It was unknown what Duanmu Yao was thinking, but after a while, she said angrily, "What else can't you confirm? The evidence is irrefutable, it was her." Yes, it was me, it was me. I'll admit it, all right. Han Yunqing suddenly said impatiently. Duanmu Yao was very surprised, but Qiao Tong was angry. Esteemed Wang Fei, if you want to admit your guilt, why did you invite old man here? What do we do now that the autopsy isn't conclusive? The golden needles were indeed mine, and there were needle wounds on the soles of my feet. If I don't admit it, who will? Han Yunqing shrugged helplessly. Esteemed Empress, old man just said that there was poison in the body. Although there were signs of poisoning, there was also physical evidence. However, we can't confirm whether esteemed Empress Shui died from poison, and we can't find any other cause of death, so we can't come to a conclusion. Do you understand? Qiao Tong was a little anxious. Why didn't these two women understand even after he'd explained twice? One was Western Zhou's princess, a celestial mountain disciple, and the other was Qin Wangfei. They weren't stupid. Seeing that Han Yunqing didn't say anything, Qiao Tong asked again, "Esteemed Wangfei, do you understand?" Third Elder Shen had helped him a lot, and this was the first time he'd asked him for help. He couldn't be a hindrance. Moreover, he'd been doing autopsies all his life and hadn't found a single case that was unjust, false, or wrong. This time, he had to make an exception and preserve his integrity in his later years. He couldn't make a hasty decision just because he couldn't do the autopsy. This was an autopsy, not a matter of one or the other logic. I understand, but it's a pity that some people still don't understand. Sigh, some people are stupid. Han Yunqing smiled. She didn't say who was stupid, but Duanmu Yao immediately admitted it. She snorted, "Who says I don't understand? Great Coroner Chow, if you can't find any other evidence, then you can prove that she's the murderer. Don't you understand this logic?" Duanmu Yao actually retorted to anger Qiao Tong. Qiao Tong's mouth twitched. He could tell that Qin Wangfei wasn't stupid. As for whether Princess Duan was stupid or not, he was at a loss. "I don't understand." Qiao Tong shook his head. Duanmu Yao said seriously, "How can you not understand such a simple logic? If the murderer isn't Han Yunqing, why would the golden needles be stabbed under my imperial mother's feet? Could it be that someone framed her? After my imperial mother died, they added another needle." Long Fei Yi was the first to laugh at her words. Of course, he wasn't laughing because of Duanmu Yao, but because of Han Yunqing. Without a doubt, Han Yunqing had been waiting for Duanmu Yao to say it herself. Gu Qisha and Mu Ling were secretly amused as well. Qiao Tong was the only one who laughed out loud. "Princess Duan, you're right. If the needle was added later, then we might have jumped to conclusions today. The real murderer will probably laugh at us." Duanmu Yao gave a start, frightened by her own words. If Qiao Tong or Han Yunqing had said those words in the beginning, she might have denied them immediately. But now that she'd said it herself, she couldn't help but think it over. When she recalled Qiao Tong's words and Han Yunqing's reaction, her resolute heart wavered again. She muttered to herself, "Chu Qingge, Princess Duan, we can't let esteemed Empress die with grievances." Qiao Tong said, "It's just a single needle. This Wang Fei won't accept it even if I admit it." Han Yunqing said coldly. Duanmu Yao glanced at Han Yunqing before relenting. "Then what do you want to do? We can't do an autopsy now. Princess Duan, old man has an idea, but..." Qiao Tong was in a difficult position. "Go ahead and say it," Duanmu Yao said seriously. Old man remembers that there's a wondrous medicine in the world called rising from the dead. Before he could finish, Duanmu Yao grew agitated. Rising from the dead? You're thinking too much. Rising from the dead is a heaven-defying medicine that can restore a corpse to its original state in a short period of time. But once the time passes, the corpse will turn into a puddle of blood. In other words, there won't even be bones left. Mu Ling was the one to explain. She knew all the wondrous medicines in the world. No wonder you're a genius from Medicine City. My apologies for my lack of manners. Qiao Tong smiled and bowed. I don't dare. Mu Ling was very modest as she turned to Duanmu Yao. This medicine is hard to come by. It's hard to find it in such a short time. According to this one's understanding, this medicine comes from Medicine City's medicine hut. Qiao Tong looked towards Han Yunqing and tried to sound her out. I wonder if esteemed Wang Fei. Han Yunqing cut him off before he could finish. What's there to be afraid of? As long as the medicine hut has the medicine, this Wang Fei will definitely ask master for it. Qiao Tong gave a start, a little lost. He wasn't trying to test esteemed Wang Fei's courage, but whether or not esteemed Wang Fei could beg the king of medicine for rising from the dead. Why was esteemed Wang Fei so agitated? Duanmu Yao saw Han Yunqing's agitation. She didn't want to believe that Han Yunqing wasn't her mother's murderer, but Han Yunqing's actions had shaken her heart again and again. Had she really framed Han Yunqing? Had she really been played for a fool by Chu Qingge? Duanmu Yao's mind was in a mess with these two questions. Princess Duan, then, should we use this medicine or not? Qiao Tong asked seriously. Chapter 659. Should she use the medicine of resurrection or not? Duanmu Yao's gaze finally returned to her mother's corpse. She hesitated. Empress Shui was already miserable enough. If her body didn't exist, she would never be able to rest in peace. In the silence, Qiao Tong sighed deeply. Even as a coroner, he faced corpses every day, but he couldn't bear to see such a thing happen. After a while, Duanmu Yao asked in a choked voice, Great Coroner Qiao, is there no other way? Qiao Tong shook his head helplessly. There's no other way. Duanmu Yao fell silent again. For some reason, Han Yunqing couldn't bear it. It wasn't for Duanmu Yao, but for Empress Shui. After all, Empress Shui was innocent. Han Yunqing couldn't help looking at Long Fei Yi, but saw that Long Fei Ye's eyes were cold and unmoved. This man's heart. How cold could it be? Even though he was always warm, she hadn't forgotten his cold-bloodedness and heartlessness. What would Duanmu Yao think if she found out the truth one day? Suddenly, Duanmu Yao's resolute voice broke Han Yunqing's train of thought. Use the medicine. If we can't find the real culprit, we won't be able to rest in peace even if we bury the corpse. What's the use? She looked at Han Yunqing and snorted. Han Yunqing, you have to do what you say. If you can't get the medicine of resurrection, then you'll be the one who killed my mother. Han Yunqing didn't answer her. Instead, she ordered, Men, send a messenger hawk to the medicine hut and ask for the medicine. With that, the matter was put on hold for the time being. It only took half a day to send a messenger hawk from Yaoshui to the medicine hut and back. Duanmu Yao had no intention of leaving. Han Yunqing didn't have that much time to accompany her. She and Long Fei Yi went back to rest first. Ning Qing sat in a corner of the roof, watching Han Yunqing's figure disappear at the end of the alley. He was still in a daze. Master, I'm afraid, there's something fishy going on, one of the attendants murmured. Ning Qingshi lazily rose to his feet and stretched. Then he asked seriously, Say, what do you think Han Yunqing's hiding in her head? The attendants were left speechless. How should he know? Master, if Duanmu Yao suspects Chu Qingge, then we. Another attendant reminded him. What's the rush? Even if you suspect them, you'll only suspect the Chu clan. Ning Cheng had left the Chu clan with a trick up his sleeve. The medicine hut, but the medicine huts, medicines to medicine, but the decoction ants, the medicine huts, and hun to medicine hut, sb. Han Yunqing asked Mu Linger in a low voice, is there really a particular way to use this medicine? As far as I know, there isn't. Once it's cooked, just pour it over the corpse, Mu Ling murmured back. Senior pill fiend, is that right? That old thing, the king of medicine, wants to use this chance to lure you all over, Gu Qi Sha revealed the truth. Han Yunqing had no choice. She was busy dealing with Duan Muyao, so she could only ignore the king of medicine's plans for now. In any case, the king of medicine couldn't do anything to her even if he lured them over. What if the king of medicine starts making conditions again by the time we get there? Mu Ling said worriedly. She'd heard of Han Yunqing's trip to Medicine Hut before. That's too much of a loss of face for me as his disciple, isn't it? Han Yunqing teased. If he dares to do that again, I'll ask that old man from medicine requesting cave for help. As Han Yunqing spoke, she glanced at Gu Qi Sha from the corner of her eyes. Gu Qi Sha hadn't said a word this entire time. Before sunset, Han Yunqing had already told Duan Muyao and Chao Tong the news. Neither of them had any objections. They made some preparations, mainly strengthening the defenses to prevent Empress Shui's corpse from deteriorating. The next day, Duan Muyao woke up bright and early. She invited Chao Tong to sit in her carriage before rushing to Long Fei Ye's side courtyard to wait for them. Who knew that even after waiting for a long time, Han Yunqing and Long Fei Yi still hadn't come out? Duan Muyao couldn't bring herself to lose face, so she had Chao Tong knock on the door. After asking around, she found out that Long Fei Yi and Han Yunqing had left late last night. Why did they leave first? Chao Tong was helpless. Esteemed Wang Fei said that when you arrived in Medicine City, you should go directly to the Council of Elders. Someone will bring you to the medicine hut, the servant said seriously. Chao Tong didn't ask any questions, but returned to the carriage to see Duan Muyao's face turn gloomy. It was obvious that Long Fei Yi and Han Yunqing didn't want to travel with her. Actually, Ning Cheng was hiding in the shadows as well. He'd come early in the morning to wait for them, but hadn't seen anyone either. Master, Miss Jing's wedding date has been set, so there's no time. In a few days, the Tang clan will come to propose marriage. The wedding will be at the end of the month, the servant reported. Miss Jing and young Master Noah have already been arguing for 2 days. Miss Jing refuses to stay at the Tang clan for a full year, so young Master Noah has asked you to go back and preside over the situation. How troublesome. Ning Cheng was impatient, but he still returned to Cloud Realm Trade Consortium. He couldn't be careless about the Tang clan's affairs, so he wouldn't allow Ning Jing to act recklessly. Follow Duan Muyao and the rest. Report to me immediately if anything happens. He was about to leave when he added, keep an eye on that needle for your lordship. The servant was bewildered, but didn't dare to ask. By now, Han Yunqing and the rest had already traveled an entire night and were far from Yaoshui Prefecture. Gu Qi Sha and Mu Ling hadn't followed them. Mu Ling had been very excited to see the medicine hut for herself, but after learning that Gu Qi Sha wasn't coming, she decided to stay behind in Yaoshui Prefecture. Gu Qi Sha only said, what does it have to do with this old man, before deciding not to come. Han Yunqing didn't pursue the matter, while Long Fei Yi seemed to have guessed something, but didn't ask. Long Fei Yi was currently reading a letter from the Tang clan about Tang Li's wedding. Has Cloud Realm Trade Consortium made any progress in planting medicinal ingredients in northern Li's snowy mountains? Long Fei Yi asked. Not yet. I'm afraid they've been delayed by Ning Jing's wedding, Chu Shifeng replied from outside the carriage. Keep a close eye on them. Long Fei Yi was still very concerned about the matter. After all, it would directly affect Han Yunqing's position at Pill Fiend Pharmacy. Han Yunqing didn't take the matter to heart. As she saw it, even if Cloud Realm Trade Consortium really did manage to grow the medicinal ingredients, she only needed to tell Medical City about it and they'd be unable to sell their products. She was more concerned with the matter at hand. Long Fei Yi, just how did Empress Shui die? Han Yunqing still didn't know the truth. She knew that Long Fei Yi had sent men to kill Empress Shui, but she didn't know the cause of death. She assumed it was an assassination, but there were no obvious wounds on the body. The Chu clan and Ning Cheng must have done an autopsy as well, but they probably didn't find anything. Otherwise, they wouldn't have made a wound on Empress Shui's foot, but poisoned the original wound instead. Long Fei Yi leaned lazily against the high pillow as if dozing off. Han Yunqing scooted over and pushed him. Tell me, why are you so sure that Chao Tong won't be able to find anything? Aren't you afraid that the corpse will give you away? Long Fei Yi reached out and pulled her into his arms. That's not important. The results weren't important. What mattered was the process and Duan Muyao's opinion. Tell me, it's not like I'll betray you. Han Yunqing wouldn't give up until she knew the truth. Long Fei Yi still didn't speak. Han Yunqing narrowed her eyes and said threateningly, Are you going to tell me or not? Long Fei Yi still shook his head. Han Yunqing suddenly tickled him under the armpit, but Long Fei Yi quickly dodged and dropped her hand. Only Han Yunqing knew that his greatest weakness was being ticklish. Han Yunqing wouldn't give up and kept tickling him. Are you going to tell me or not? Are you going to tell me or not? Long Fei Yi only dodged silently at first, but he couldn't help but laugh out loud. Still, he was stubborn and wouldn't tell her. The two of them began to make a ruckus inside the carriage, their movements loud and clear. Amidst their laughter were Han Yunqing's gasps for breath. Outside, Uncle Gao and Chu Shifeng exchanged glances, their imaginations running wild over the events in the carriage. An autopsy to prove one's innocence was a big deal. News of their trip to the medical hut had already spread, so all of Cloud Realm continent was paying attention. But the two of them were still in the mood to play around in the carriage. Would Duan Muyao lose her mind if she found out? After a few days of travel, Han Yunqing's group arrived at the medical hut. Pill King did not make things difficult for them as they had imagined. Instead, he took out the rising dead pill and enthusiastically expressed his willingness to help them with the medicine. Han Yunqing mused that this old thing must have really learned his lesson. Yunqi, did you read the ancient medicine tome I gave you last time? The King of Medicine asked with a chuckle. I did, Han Yunqing replied. She was busy cultivating the second level of the poison storage space, so where would she find the time to study ancient texts? She'd leave it to Mu Ling and Gu Qi to study while she flipped through Mu Ling's notes. Then, is there anything that you don't understand? The King of Medicine asked. He'd given the ancient medicine tome to Han Yunqing so she could write letters to him and ask for his guidance. That way, master and disciple would gradually get to know each other better and solidify their master-disciple relationship. Since he couldn't force this girl to stay, he was more than willing to be her master. I'm still reading. I'm still reading. I'll think about the parts one don't understand. It won't be too late to ask after I understand them, Han Yunqing said half-heartedly. After chatting a bit more, she went to visit the old man at Medicine Requesting Cave. Compared to the King of Medicine, Han Yunqing liked the old man more. Unfortunately, he refused to see her because he had no good news. He was waiting for his disciple to return. Han Yunqing couldn't help but feel angry at Gu's smiling eyes. No matter how much she pitied the old man, she'd never betray Gu. Han Yunqing and Long Fei Yi rested at the medicine hut for half a day before Duan Muyao and Chao Tong were brought over by the Council of Elders. The King of Medicine examined the corpse and immediately brewed the medicine himself without saying a word. Chao Tong greatly respected the King of Medicine. He was already so old, but he acted like a little follower, following the King of Medicine around and helping him. On the other hand, Han Yunqing, the disciple, stood on the sidelines and watched with folded arms. Truly, truly, outrageous. It was also here that Duanmu Yao finally believed that Han Yunqing had been accepted as a disciple by the King of Medicine. Her already bad mood worsened. After all, the status of a disciple of the King of Medicine wasn't low. Aside from being Qin Wangfei, Han Yunqing had another identity to show off. Duanmu Yao hated the feeling of being pulled closer. Soon, the King of Medicine finished brewing the medicine and personally came over to administer it. Although he put on an act and made a lot of fuss, the medicine still ended up being sprinkled on the corpse. As more and more medicine was sprinkled on the corpse, it slowly recovered. Qiao Tong watched from the sidelines, his brows furrowed even tighter. What had he discovered? Chapter 660. The medicine of resurrection was indeed worthy of its reputation. This name was not given blindly. As more and more of the medicine was sprinkled, the corpse gradually recovered. Before long, the corpse had returned to its original state. Aside from a slightly greenish complexion, it was no different from a sleeping person. Those who didn't know better might actually think that Empress Shui had come back from the dead. Everyone was stunned by the effects of the medicine. Even Long Fei Yi was secretly shocked. There were many things that couldn't be accomplished by martial arts, but medicine could create miracles. Qiao Tong's brows furrowed as he watched the corpse slowly recover. He had seen the secret hidden in the corpse at a glance. This case could be said to be half solved. He shook his head in disbelief. At this time, everyone was still shocked by the effects of the medicine and didn't notice his reaction. The medicine of resurrection will only last for 4 hours. After that, the corpse will turn into a pool of blood and not a single bone will be left. Girl, what do you want to examine? Hurry up. The King of Medicine only had eyes for Han Yunqing. If not for Han Yunqing, he wouldn't have let this group of people into the medicine hut so casually. Great Coroner Chao, hurry up. Han Yunqing was calm and didn't look like a suspect. Duanmu Yao had been observing her all this time. Although she didn't want to believe it, the more she looked at Han Yunqing, the more she felt that Han Yunqing didn't look like the murderer. Duanmu Yao was irritated and stopped looking at her. Cold, she said, Great Coroner Chao, the cost of restoring the corpse is not small. You must be careful. If there's any mistake, you should know the consequences. Princess Duan, there's something this one must tell you first. Qiao Tong said seriously. Is it more important than the autopsy? You only have 4 hours and you want to waste it. Duanmu Yao was angry. Unexpectedly, Qiao Tong said, this matter is as important as the autopsy. Princess Duan, you must know. Please come over here. Duanmu Yao stood at the head of the coffin while Qiao Tong stood at the bottom. Why did he want her to come over? Duanmu Yao walked over suspiciously. What are you trying to say? Can't you be more direct? 4 hours isn't. Before she could finish, Duanmu Yao abruptly shut her mouth. She followed Qiao Tong's finger and saw that the wound on her mother's foot had disappeared. The wound on Empress Shui's foot was caused by a golden needle. It wasn't obvious at first, but due to the poison, it had turned bluish-purple. When the coroner had removed the needle, it had caused a second injury, so the wound had become obvious. Now, how could it disappear? How? Duanmu Yao couldn't believe it. She moved closer to take a closer look, but she still couldn't see a wound. The bottom of Empress Shui's foot was smooth and white. There wasn't the slightest trace of injury. Impossible. I don't believe it. Duanmu Yao turned to look at Han Yunqing again. This time, Han Yunqing was looking back at her, her eyes clear and bright. Even if she knew who the real culprit was, there was nothing to feel guilty about. What did Long Fei Ye's murder have to do with her? She just didn't understand why Chu Qingge and Ning Cheng wanted to make things difficult for her. If they couldn't find the cause of death, they could have faked a sword wound to pin it on Long Fei Yi. Princess Yao, This is precisely what I wanted to tell you. The rising dead drug will restore a corpse to its original state. After death, any traces of the body will be erased. Thus, Duan Muyao had figured this out before the drug was administered. She seemed to have lost all strength as she muttered to herself, so my imperial mother didn't die from a poison needle? That's right. Qiao Tong was very certain. Princess Yao, this needle was stabbed into a esteemed empress's foot after she died. The person who used the needle was extremely skilled. If it wasn't for the rising dead drug, this one would have had a hard time proving that the wound on esteemed empress's foot was caused after she died. You suspected it long ago? Duan Muyao demanded. Yes, Qiao Tong was very frank. Then why didn't you say anything? Why didn't you explain? Why? Duan Muyao was about to cry. Why didn't you say anything earlier? If you did, my mother wouldn't have been reduced to ashes. Why? Princess Yao, this one only suspected. If I wanted proof, it would only be in theory. I don't think you'd believe me anyway. Now that you've seen it with your own eyes, this one won't explain any further, Qiao Tong replied honestly. Duan Muyao was so angry that she almost drew her sword and killed him. But she had to admit that he was right. If she hadn't seen it with her own eyes, she wouldn't have believed anyone's excuse for Han Yunqing's crimes. Han Yunqing had been framed, and the needle had been added. So all the evidence in her hands was fake. Who else could have killed her imperial mother besides Chu Qingga's group? What a Chu Qingga! She actually dared to play me like this. She wanted to use me against Long Fei Yi and Han Yunqing. No way. Hatred turned into strength as Duan Muyao's eyes turned red. Qiao Tong, why aren't you inspecting the corpse yet? Just how did my imperial mother die? You have to give me an answer. The corpse had already begun to change, showing signs of hardening like other corpses. Qiao Tong quickly took out a pile of small tools and put on a pair of gloves to examine it. Although time was limited, Qiao Tong still carefully examined the corpse from head to toe, not missing a single detail. Silence fell upon the courtyard as everyone's attention rested on Qiao Tong's hands. Han Yunqing was still a little nervous right now. If Qiao Tong really did find out something, she and Long Fei Yi would really be smashing their own feet with a rock. As time trickled by, livor mortis began to appear on the corpse. Qiao Tong knitted his brows as his eyes focused. He seemed to have discovered something as he lifted his head to glance at Han Yunqing and Long Fei Yi. Everyone waited, expecting him to speak, but he didn't. Instead, he lowered his head again. Just how is it? Duan Muyao couldn't wait any longer. Qiao Tong glanced at the time before revealing an awkward expression. Princess, this one still hasn't figured out the cause of death. There's still time, so this one will do his best. More than 2 hours had passed, but they still didn't know how she died. How were they supposed to find other evidence? Duan Muyao grew angry. Qiao Tong, what are you saying? How can you not figure out the cause of death? What kind of world's #1 coroner are you? Princess Duan, take a look for yourself. There's no sign of any injury on the Empress body, Qiao Tong explained. If it was so easy to figure out, why would I need you? Duan Muyao retorted. Qiao Tong had no choice but to shut his mouth. This wasn't the first time he'd encountered a situation like this, but it was the first time he was so pressed for time. He had to seize the moment. Han Yunqing was also sizing up the corpse, her heart filled with bewilderment. She'd already eliminated the possibility of external injuries, and there was no sign of poisoning. Could it be that she died of illness? Some deaths due to illness couldn't be found in a short period of time, let alone ancient autopsy techniques. Even modern medicine couldn't figure it out. Princess Duan, this one is certain that esteemed Wang Fei didn't die from external injuries or poisoning. There's only one possibility, which is that she died of illness. May I know if esteemed Wang Fei had any previous illnesses? Qiao Tong asked seriously. My imperial mother's health has always been good. She would occasionally catch a cold, but there's no way she'd die of illness. Someone must have killed her. Duanmu Yao was agitated. Although she'd been away from her imperial mother for a long time, they'd still exchanged letters. She was very familiar with her mother's condition. Princess Duan, this one can't rule out the possibility of someone using esteemed Empress's illness to murder her. If we want to figure out the cause of death, I'm afraid we'll have to. Qiao Tong hesitated, but didn't finish his sentence. After all, he was facing the corpse of Western Zhou's empress. After all, Emperor Kang Cheng had been negotiating with the Chu clan troops and Tianning's prince regent to return the empress's corpse and hand over the true culprit. Although the empress was dead, she was more important than alive. Afraid of what? Tell me. Duanmu Yao asked anxiously. Qiao Tong was still hesitating when Han Yunqing spoke up. I'm afraid we'll have to dissect the corpse. From what Han Yunqing knew, ancient coroners only did superficial examinations. It was surprising that Qiao Tong dared to dissect the corpse to find out the cause of the illness. Impossible. Duanmu Yao refused without hesitation. She could accept the bones dissolving into a puddle of blood, but she couldn't accept dissecting the corpse. She would never allow her imperial mother to suffer such humiliation after her death. Princess Duan, if we don't dissect the corpse, I'm afraid we won't be able to find out the true cause of death, Qiao Tong said helplessly. Are you sure you'll find out if we dissect the corpse? Duanmu Yao retorted coldly. Qiao Tong admitted honestly, I can't be certain. Duanmu Yao glared at him, but had no strength to argue. She knelt by Empress Shui's corpse as tears streamed down her cheeks. She regretted it. He was thoroughly regretting it. She didn't dare to believe Chu Qingge's lies. She shouldn't have caused such a ruckus. Imperial Mother's corpse was about to disappear. How was she supposed to explain things to Imperial Father? She was hoping to borrow the strength of Celestial Mountain to force the Chu clan and the Duke of Ning to investigate the cause of her Imperial Mother's death. Then she could bring her body back to Western Zhou. How would she have the face to go back now? All of this was Chu Qingge's fault. Qiao Tong didn't give up just because he couldn't figure out the cause of death. His attitude was as earnest as ever. Princess Duan, although we can't confirm esteemed Empress's cause of death, we can at least prove that Qin Wangfei wasn't the one who killed her. The Chu clan's motives for accusing Qin Wangfei of murder are worth considering. Who else could it be but them? Chu Qingge, Ning Cheng. This princess can't exist under the same sky as you. Duanmu Yao gritted her teeth. She imagined that Chu Qingge must be laughing at her right now. Qiao Tong didn't give any conclusions, while Han Yunqing didn't speak up to explain herself. Just like that, Duanmu Yao was convinced that the Chu clan was behind the murder. She wished that none of this had happened at all, that she could be smart enough to see through Chu Qingge's schemes. Unfortunately, the truth was right before her eyes. Abruptly, a strange sound came from the corpse. In a flash, Empress Shui's corpse dissolved into a puddle of blood and water. Not even her bones remained. Imperial Mother. Yao Yao has let you down. Let you down. Duanmu Yao wailed as tears streamed down her face. Although Han Yunqing knew the truth, she still couldn't sympathize with Duanmu Yao. It's good that Empress Shui's gone like this, she thought. The real culprit was standing right by Han Yunqing's side. He stood there with his hands clasped behind his back, his eyes as cold as ice the entire time. He seemed like a heartless bystander standing outside the scene. Han Yunqing took his hand and murmured. Chapter 661. Han Yunqing asked in a low voice, Long Fei Yi, what's the real cause of death? Internal injuries, Long Fei Yi muttered back. Internal injuries. Han Yunqing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Just what happened? using internal energy to injure the 5 viscera without leaving any marks on the surface. Once the chest is cut open, everything will be clear at a glance, Long Feiyi said. How can it injure the 5 viscera without leaving any marks? That's not something a normal person can do, right? Han Yunqing asked. Only Celestial Mountain's internal energy can do it, Long Feiyi replied honestly. Han Yunqing finally realized how dangerous the situation had been. If Duanmu Yao had been a little more ruthless and had Chao Tong cut open the chest, the truth would have been revealed. Anyone who knew Celestial Mountain's internal energy arts was either Long Feiyi himself or one of his subordinate swordsmen. This was what it meant to kill without spilling blood. Han Yunqing's heart was filled with emotions. After a long silence, she asked, Long Feiyi, Empress Shui is innocent, right? Her status makes it impossible for her to be innocent, Long Feiyi replied. Han Yunqing wanted to retort, but didn't know how. She asked, then what about her status as Qin Wangfei? Long Feiyi looked at her with furrowed brows. What are you thinking about? A general's success is built on the bones of 10,000. How many skeletons are piled up for the glorious throne? Han Yunqing sighed with emotion. It's destined to be piled up with thousands of skeletons. The only difference is whether or not the person sitting on the throne can start a golden age so that Cloud Realm continent will no longer suffer from famine, war, or displacement. As Long Feiyi spoke, his gaze flickered to the sobbing Duanmu Yao kneeling on the ground. His eyes were as cold as ever, devoid of sympathy or pity. After circling around in such a big circle, everything was still under his control. Ning Cheng and Duanmu Yao could fight it out. Han Yunqing had almost forgotten how big this man's heart was. At this moment, she remembered. She interlocked her fingers with his. Long Feiyi, I'll accompany you. Long Fei tightened his grip on her hand without a word. Before he left, he walked up to Chao Tong and questioned, where are the golden needles? As soon as Chao Tong took out the golden needle, Long Feiyi snatched it away. Return it to its rightful owner. Chao Tong looked up at Long Feiyi. Other than smiling, what else could he do? This needle originally belonged to the Princess Consort, so it should be returned to its rightful owner. Besides, even if it wasn't esteemed Wang Fei's, he had no choice but to give it to His Highness Duke of Qin. Return it to its rightful owner. Han Yunqing smiled and reached out to Long Feiyi. From today onwards, anything you lose belongs to your lordship. Don't even think about getting it back. Long Feiyi was very unhappy. Han Yunqing was resentful, but didn't dare to fight with him. She felt that she should be more careful in the future so she didn't cause any more trouble. Long Feiyi wrapped the needle in a handkerchief before putting it in his sleeve. Han Yunqing knew that this misophobic fellow would definitely wash the needle multiple times when he got home. Duanmu Yao wanted to kneel on the ground and cry, but Han Yunqing and Long Feiyi were already preparing to leave. To them, this matter was basically over. The only thing they could be sure of was that Chu Qingge and Ning Cheng had forged evidence to deceive Duanmu Yao. That made them the biggest suspects. Han Yunqing thanked Chao Tong before preparing to leave with Long Feiyi. The King of Medicine quickly chased after her with a chuckle. Lass, aren't you going to stay for a few more days? The King of Medicine's tone made it sound like they were very familiar with each other. Because the King of Medicine had once wanted to keep Han Yunqing at the medical hut, Long Feiyi no longer had a good impression of it. Before Han Yunqing could speak, Long Feiyi asked coldly, is there anything else? The King of Medicine didn't have a good impression of Long Feiyi either. He had long guessed that if it wasn't for Long Feiyi, Han Yunqing might have agreed to stay with him at the medical hut. Still, the King of Medicine was a shrewd old man. He wasn't stupid enough to offend Long Feiyi in front of Han Yunqing. He was still smiling kindly. It's nothing important. Be careful on the road. Lass, you should take a look at that ancient medical book of yours. I will. I'm reading it already. Han Yunqing might have been half-hearted, but her attitude was better than before. At least she wasn't so hostile to the king of medicine anymore. Chao Tong saw this with his own eyes and heart. He knew that Han Yunqing was the king of medicine's disciple, but never expected Han Yunqing to be so impudent in front of the king of medicine. This lass really didn't know how lucky she was. If the king of medicine hadn't been willing to take out the rising dead, she wouldn't have been able to escape punishment so easily. She was really too impudent. The king of medicine watched as Han Yunqing and Long Fei Yi left. He was grinning from ear to ear. He didn't mind Han Yunqing's impudence at all. Han Yunqing's attitude towards him this time was clearly much better than the last time. He thought that he had done well as a master. To be able to take in such a genius as Han Yunqing as his disciple, he didn't wait at the medicine hut for nothing all these years. The king of medicine returned with a chuckle. The moment he saw Chao Tong and Duan Muyao, he immediately resumed his serious expression and didn't smile. "You're still not leaving?" He rudely chased them away. Chao Tong hurriedly bowed. "Senior, sorry for the disturbance. This one will take his leave." Duan Muyao was still crying, immersed in her sorrow. Chao Tong was about to leave and felt really bad about it, so he came back to persuade her. "Princess Duan, you should leave. Don't hurt your eyes from crying. Princess Duan, let's go. You can only avenge esteemed empress after you recover, isn't that right?" The word avenge successfully roused Duan Muyao's fighting spirit. She rose to her feet and said coldly, "Chu Qingge, I, Duan Muyao, swear that I won't rest until I get my revenge." Around 3 days after Chao Tong and Duan Muyao left the medicine hut, news spread throughout Cloud Realm continent. Because of Chao Tong's participation, Western Zhou's Emperor Kangcheng had no doubts. He angrily dispatched troops to the west of Fenglin Prefecture to warn Ningcheng that if he didn't hand over the Chu clan troops, Western Zhou would wash Tianning in blood to avenge the empress. Duan Muyao pulled herself together again and led a group of Celestial Mountain swordsmen to push an empty coffin filled with blood to the gates of Western Liang's imperial city. She wanted Chu Qingge to meet her outside. In any case, Western Zhou and Tianning were at daggers drawn and on tense terms. Ning Cheng had been busy teaching Ning Jing a lesson at Cloud Realm Trade Consortium's headquarters, but rushed back to Western Liang as soon as he heard the news. As soon as he saw Chu Qingge, he raged, "What are you doing? What did you promise your lordship in the first place?" Ning Cheng was no fool. If Chu Qingge hadn't told him that she'd found a reliable person to fake the wound, he wouldn't have acted rashly. Chao Tong didn't find out that the wound was fake. They used the medicine hut's miracle medicine to restore the corpse. Chu Qingge explained hastily. "Ning Cheng, just who killed Empress Shui? Just how did she die?" Ning Cheng gave Chu Qingge a cold look. He didn't want to waste any more words with this woman. If Empress Shui hadn't been killed by Long Fei Ye's men, they would have found the cause of death long ago. They hadn't found the cause of death or the true culprit, but they'd succeeded in convincing Duan Muyao that he and the Chu clan were the culprits. Now that the corpse was gone, he and the Chu clan were set to take the blame. "Ning Cheng, what do we do now? Emperor Kangcheng's looking like he'll really start a war." Chu Qingge said anxiously. Ning Cheng didn't answer. He wasn't worried about Emperor Kangcheng, but Duan Muyao. Long Fei Yi had done all he could to sow discord between Duan Muyao and the Chu clan for a reason. The central regions of Cloud Realm continent were home to the aristocratic families, the eastern regions were home to the merchants, and the western regions were home to the Jianghu. The three-way battlefield spanned thousands of li and was home to many factions of the Jianghu. Now that they'd offended Duan Muyao, they'd offended Celestial Mountain as well as half of the Jianghu. That was a lot of trouble. While Ning Cheng was lost in thought, a eunuch rushed in. "Your Highness Duke of Ning, the Ministry of War has sent word that the 3 batches of military grain from three-way black market have all been robbed." Ning Cheng grew alarmed. Where were they robbed? Eternal Space Mountain. They were robbed as soon as they entered, the eunuch replied. Eternal Space Mountain was the territory of the Eternal Space faction. Besides themselves, who else would dare to rob the goods passing through their territory? Ning Qing slammed a fist on the table and said coldly, "Pass down my orders. All military supplies are to be on guard against the Jianghu's forces. And also, contact Carefree City and the City of Daughters. Have their young lords come see your lordship and tell them there's something we need to discuss." The eunuch hastily left with his orders. Chu Qingge's face was ashen. "Ning Qing, if we start fighting with Western Zhou and Duan Muyao joins in, then won't we?" Before she could finish, Ning Qing cut her off coldly. "Don't worry. It was the Chu clan who killed Emperor Shui. It has nothing to do with Tianning." He was clearly planning to hand over Chu Tianyin. Chu Qingge understood. She hesitated as if she wanted to plead on Chu Tiannin's behalf, but in the end she said nothing. She always remembered that it was Chu Tianyin, her father, and her uncles who'd arranged for her to end up where she was today. She'd been ruthless to herself for so long, so how could she show mercy to anyone else now? She smiled and said, "Handing over Chu Tianyin and the Chu clan troops isn't a bad choice. In any case, the Chu clan's driving arrow archers don't have much fighting power left." Ning Qing ignored her and prepared to leave when he suddenly remembered something. He turned back and asked coldly, "Where's your lordship's item?" "What item?" Chu Qingge was lost. "The acupuncture needle." Ning Qing said coldly. "Don't tell your lordship that you lost it." Only then did Chu Qingge remember. She felt helpless as well. That thing, I told Duan Muyao about it, but, lost it?" Ning Qing didn't want to hear her explanation. Chu Qingge didn't even dare to see Duan Muyao, so how was she supposed to know where the item had gone? She had no answer. "You better find it back, or else your lordship will hand you over too," Ning Qing said coldly before leaving without looking back. "You? Ning Qing, what do you mean by this?" Chu Qingge was furious. She chased after him for a few steps, but couldn't catch up. "Am I not even worth one of Han Yinqing's needles? Ning Qing, what do you want that acupuncture needle for?" As soon as Ning Qing left, he found the same guard from before and asked coldly, "Where's the item?" To reply, "Master, this subordinate couldn't get close to the medicine hut, so I don't know who has the item," the guard reported. Ning Cheng's face was gloomy. After a while, he asked, "Can you find another one?" The guard looked troubled. He was about to reply when a warm voice spoke up. "Duke of Ning, what time is it now? You're still thinking about Han Yunqing's acupuncture needle? What do you want to do?" Looking in the direction of the voice, they saw that the person who had come was Chapter 662. Looking towards the source of the voice, they saw a dignified newcomer with an extraordinary bearing. This was none other than Ning Cheng's little sister, Emperor Tianhui's youngest noble consort, the current grand concubine Ning'an. Unlike Ning Jing's shrewdness, Ning'an was a reserved and mature woman. Although she was Ning Cheng's little sister, she looked more like an elder sister. Chu Qingge was the Empress Dowager, while she was the grand concubine. Although Chu Qingge's clothes were extravagant and luxurious, Ning An's were plain and simple. She had the bearing and dignity of a head of the imperial harem. She was quiet by nature, but not an obedient person. She'd hidden herself in Emperor Tianhui's harem for years and occupied the position of noble consort. She didn't fight for it, kept her mouth shut, and never caused any trouble. "It's so late, but you're still out for a stroll?" Ning Qing asked. He treated Ning An differently from Ning Jing and Ning Nua, because Ning An's steadiness made him feel completely at ease. "I came specifically to find you." "I heard about Empress Shui's affairs," Ning An said. "It's nothing major." "I had no intention of keeping Chu Tianyin around," Ning Qing said. Although he was reluctant to part with the Chu clan troops, he wouldn't leave someone he couldn't trust by his side for the sake of an army. He'd been keeping an eye on Chu Tianyin over the past few days. Although he hadn't found anything suspicious, he still couldn't stop worrying. He couldn't bear to give the Chu clan troops to Long Feiyi for nothing either, so handing them over to Western Zhou and destroying them was the wisest choice. Ning drew closer and looked at him seriously. Even the Duke of Qin can't mess up your plans. Why did you lose your temper over a single needle? My subordinates didn't do their jobs well, so your lordship was simply teaching them a lesson, Ning Qing said coldly before turning to leave. Really? Ning asked. It's getting late. You should go back and rest. You should plan well about what I told you last time. Your lordship doesn't want her to live past this year, Ning Qing instructed coldly. I've already made arrangements for that, Ning pressed. What do you want that needle for? You still have a plan. Ning Qing finally lost his patience. Do your job well. I don't need to explain my business to you. Big brother. Ning Qing was anxious. Unfortunately, Ning Qing ignored him and strode away. Ning couldn't help but shake her head. Ever since her parents passed away, she and her brother had worked together to support the world. In the past, whether it was the Chamber of Commerce or the various affairs of the clan, Big Brother would always look for her to discuss. This was the first time her brother had been so rude to her. How could she have the ability to control him? She was only worried that the golden needle would not only ruin his plans, it would also hurt his heart. Mistress, the people sent by Miss Jing are still waiting outside the palace. Are you going to meet them? The palace maid asked in a low voice. I won't see him. Ning said indifferently. This isn't appropriate, right? The palace maid was a little worried. She wants me to speak up for her in front of Ning Wang. Look at Ning Wang's expression just now. Do you think this consort can still speak up for him? Ning's tone was very calm, but the servant girl was too scared to say more. Yes, this servant will send him away right away. Once the palace maid was far away, Ning chased after her. As the older sister, she could be considered an experienced person. She didn't want to see her sister's efforts go to waste. Tell Jing that enduring for a year is better than enduring for a lifetime, she said. For better or worse, Jing had chosen herself. She'd only have to suffer for a year. Back then, Ning had no choice. Her only choice was to take the medicine so that she wouldn't be able to bear children for the rest of her life. She wouldn't fight for favor or power. Thus, she could devote herself to worshipping Buddha in Emperor Tianhui's harem and pass her days peacefully. Ning took out a green jade hairpin and said, the eldest sister is the mother. This counts as my dowry for her. I won't be attending the wedding. After the palace maid withdrew, Ning gave a long sigh. She only hoped that there were still descendants of Western Qin's imperial clan left to live up to the Ning clan's loyalty. The only descendant of Western Qin's imperial clan was currently sitting in the East Qin crown prince's carriage. Despite her intelligence, she was still clueless about everything. Currently, Han Yunqing and Long Feiyi were on their way back to Yaoshui Prefecture. Duanmu Yao and Emperor Kong Cheng's reactions were within their expectations. Han Yunqing said, Ning Qing only has one path to take. He'll push all the blame onto the Chu clan and hand Chu Tianyin over to Emperor Kong Cheng. Long Feiyi nodded. What about the two elders of the Chu clan? Of course he's keeping them. Without them, what can he use to threaten Chu Tianyin, the filial son? Han Yunqing smiled. If Chu Tianyin died in Emperor Kong Cheng's hands, then so be it. But what if he didn't die? He was still a descendant of the Nether clan. Long Feiyi took Han Yunqing's hand and patted it lightly. You're getting smarter and smarter. I've always been smart, all right? Han Yunqing said proudly. Long Feiyi was startled, then he burst into laughter. He'd seen many narcissistic women, but he didn't dislike this one. No matter how narcissistic she was, it was still self-confidence. Han Yunqing reminded him seriously, Long Fei Yi, if you really do manage to save those two old things, you absolutely must keep them in your hands. You're getting more and more despicable, Long Fei Yi said. I've always. Han Yunqing came to her senses halfway through her sentence and looked over disdainfully. There's nothing I can do about it. Those who get close to ink are stained black. Uncle Gao almost went astray when he heard their conversation. It was rare for these two masters to only use their mouths instead of their hands. From what he could tell, His Highness Duke of Qin was at a disadvantage. Although they were chatty, they still had to talk business. The fate of the Chu clan lies in Chu Tianin's hands. Life and death are in his hands, Long Fei Yi said. Chu Tianin was in the most difficult position. Not only did he have to face the enmity of Emperor Kang Cheng and Duan Muyao, but he also had to face Ning Cheng's suspicions and Long Fei Ye's test. If he wanted to kill his way out of these three predicaments, he had to make a choice. It all depended on what he left behind and what he gave up. Long Fei Yi was still looking forward to Chu Tianin's actions. After all, he was the one who'd thrown Tianing into chaos. Chu Tianin would probably make a move within the next few days. Han Yunqing suddenly asked, Long Fei Yi, why did Chu Tianin think of seducing you? Although there were no eternal allies or eternal enemies, Chu Tianin wouldn't go so far as to seek Long Fei Yi out. Long Fei Yi was at least half responsible for the Chu clan's current predicament. Because no one can help him besides your lordship, although Chu Tianin had been persuaded by Gu Beiyue, Long Fei Ye's words were the truth. A few days later, Han Yunqing and Long Fei Yi returned to the Yaoshui estate. They'd just gotten out of the carriage when Chu Shifeng came to report, Your Highness, esteemed Wang Fei, Chu Tianin has admitted his crimes. Admitted his crimes? Long Fei Yi didn't understand. It counts as a confession. He admitted that he was the one who killed Empress Shui, and said that if Western Zhou wants to invade Fenglin Prefecture, they'll have to go through his Chu clan troops first. Chu Shifeng reported. What's he singing now? Han Yunqing was lost. If she hadn't known beforehand that Chu Tianin was planning to rely on Long Fei Yi, she would have believed that he was loyal and devoted to Ning Cheng. Ning Cheng hadn't even tried to shift the blame, but Chu Tianin had taken it all on himself. Interesting, let's wait and see, Long Fei Yi was intrigued. After eating some food in the courtyard, Han Yunqing hastily went to bathe and catch up on sleep. Long Fei Yi naturally headed for Gu Beiyue's quarters. Did you give Chu Tianin the idea? Long Fei Yi asked. Gu Beiyue shook his head. If he can't even solve a problem like this, there's no need for your highness to keep him around. Long Fei Yi was waiting for this answer. He sat down and poured himself a cup of tea. Gu Beiyue smiled. Your Highness Duke of Qin, is there anything else you want to discuss? Long Fei Yi wouldn't sit down unless he had something important to discuss. Every time, he'd leave as soon as he finished speaking without another word. Your dantian is damaged, so why was it able to reflect this prince's true qi? Long Fei Yi had been wanting to ask this question for a long time, and he just happened to have some free time today. This one has been pondering over it these past few days, but unfortunately. Gu Beiyue sighed. He didn't explain much, only saying indifferently, a doctor doesn't treat himself. So be it. Hand, Long Fei Yi said. Gu Beiyue was slightly taken aback, but he quickly extended his hand. He hadn't expected Long Fei Yi to take his pulse for a second time. Long Fei Yi felt for a long time, but couldn't find anything. Suddenly, he grabbed Gu Beiyue's hand and placed their palms together, once again transferring true qi to Gu Beiyue. Not long after, the true qi was reflected back. If Long Fei Yi hadn't been sitting so steadily, he probably would have been flung out long ago. Last time, it had happened so suddenly that Gu Beiyue didn't seriously feel it. This time, he closed his eyes and seriously felt the changes in his dantian. Long Fei Yi didn't disturb him, drinking tea while waiting. Gu Beiyue seemed to have discovered something and tried to circulate his qi. At first, it went smoothly, but after a while, he spat out a mouthful of blood, his whole face turning pale. "What's the situation?" Long Fei Yi asked. Gu Beiyue looked at him for a long time, then said seriously, "This one's Dantian, perhaps it can be saved." "Why do you say that?" Long Fei Yi was surprised. When he was injured, he had a blood clot in his dantian, seriously injuring his dantian and crippling his inner qi. Now, it seemed that it wasn't the case. Now, it didn't look like a blood clot, but more like a qi clot. Blood clot and qi clot could both cause serious injuries to the dantian, but the consequences were different. Maybe it's because the true qi clot in the dantian, causing the qi to not flow smoothly and unable to circulate. Gu Beiyue said seriously. Long Fei Yi was an expert, so he understood immediately. Gu Beiyue's true qi and inner qi might not have completely disappeared, but it could be because the true qi clot in his dantian, causing his inner qi to be unable to circulate. If the true qi was allowed to flow smoothly, there was a possibility that the dantian could recover, and once the dantian recovered, the inner qi could be restored. The thing that's resisting this prince's true qi is that clot of qi? Long Fei Yi asked. It's very likely. Gu Beiyue's eyes revealed joy. It was fortunate that he could stand up. If he could recover his inner qi and the shadow technique, that would be extremely fortunate. If I lose it, it's my fate, but if I gain it, it's my fortune. Long Fei Yi's eyes flashed with a touch of complexity, and he asked lightly, "How sure are you that you can recover?" Dissolving the blood clot wasn't difficult for Gu Beiyue, but the true qi and inner qi were completely lost, so the blood clot didn't have much of an effect. If there was a qi clot, the true qi and inner qi would still be there, but it was clotted and suppressed. Once it was unblocked, the true qi would cover the body, and the true qi would nourish the dantian, and the inner qi would recover in a few days. Unblocking the blood clot shouldn't be difficult for Gu Beiyue, right? Gu Beiyue didn't answer Long Fei Yi's question, but smiled and asked, "If this one recovers, will your highness still be at ease with this one?" You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.